First of all, we started the season with a bang, but now we can finalize the race with the speed driver. Now knowing there's a good title.
And it's the Wilson of Racing that decides that everybody's facing here for the playoffs. Most of the fields in the playoffs are guaranteed their spots. There's just a couple of teams to work out in those final positions that could come down to either points or could come down to a brand new race winner. And one of those tracks, one of those racetracks where you can get that brand new winner here tonight makes it all the way exciting through the final lap of this race. And we're here earlier this season, the first racetrack that we've been to on the schedule Droppin the Hammah. So it's interesting that we'll get to see for the first time how these guys learned from that first race and apply what they did to this one.
Nearly 4 months we've been trying to figure that equation out with the 16 will come in. So now we're here in Daytona, May 18th. Just a couple of weeks ago, that playoff race for Charlotte Motor Speedway. We've been trying to kind of figure out what's going to happen going into this. We talked about that very 5 to 6 very, very different racetrack. Last week, quite technology raceway and Gateway, but right back to Speedway. This is what happened just one Sunday ago to try and figure out who would be in and who would be on the outskirts going into this race. Here was the green flag. That's Ross Harlow and Steven Stepien at the front portion of the field. They were trying to lead them through, and then all of a sudden, drama on lap number 1. Alex Muscarella getting sideways in the middle of 3 and 4. He'll catch James Kunkel. The 42 car will be lodged out of the race early, and the 48 of Muscarella would continue on. There more drama. Bit of beef between Stephen Maggio, the winner earlier this season, and Warren Kyle Keith, and his number 78 machine goes for the spill there outside of turn 2. But the big thing that was of emphasis throughout this race, Francisco, was trying to find grip. This Gateway track didn't provide much of it. There's Stephen Harlow. Bit of strategy there midway through stage number 1.
Strategy was in effect for most of that first stage, but before it could really truly pour out for the 11 of Stephen Harlow, right here, an incident between cutline drivers Richard Swavely and Chris Progar coming to the final lap of the stage resulted in Steven Stepien holding on what was going to be a pass for the stage win by the 11 car, and there Steven Stepien sweeping the stages over at the 1 1/4 mile racetrack. There you see the battle for different positions throughout the stages, and eventually there was going to be a little bit of an incident, a tussle there between the brothers, and Cedric Hunter involved there, sending the 16 down to the inside and hurting his chances. But that's not the last we'll see of him, as this was a battle for the race lead after Maggio took 2 tires it's Steven Stempien that was able to get by him with 25 laps to go.
And at that point, we almost thought the race would be all said and done. Stempien was running away into the sunset until a big crash off turn 2. Progar getting involved there with Warren Kyle Keith. They would be basically sent out of the race. Then a crucial restart inside, 15 laps to go. Harlow pulling away, while Stephen Harlow, loose out of turn 4, catches Brandon Banks with him, and a couple of others. There is Keith, unfortunately, could not catch a break. He ends up big time in the accident, and that brings out a crucial late yellow. And just when we thought the drama would not get any bigger, Stempien makes the move to the inside, coming to the white flag. He would look to the bottom in turns 1 and 2 on Ross Harlow, and then it was all that she rode. The car number 88, Steven Stempien, finally walking away with his first career dropping the Hammah Cup Series victory, one that he's been awaiting for so long. Told us in Victory Lane last Sunday that this was what he was looking for, the monkey off of his back. And after several races throughout the season where he had circled, was very fast, but got bad luck that took him out of contention, he could not be denied after the many laps at the Worldwide Technology Raceway. So with that win, he is fully locked into the playoffs with a W before he had been locked in through points. And here is where we stand. 13 drivers so far confirmed for the inaugural season of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series for the playoffs, and now a couple of more drivers to decide. Kip Beasley back in 14th. He is in with at least a stage finish in stages 1 or 2 tonight from Daytona, and then it comes down to the final spot 16, where Casey Knighton and Chris Progar are going to go brawling for the final spot. And as of right now, I don't think we see Casey Knighton in the server for iRacing, so I believe he will be knocked out. But the conversation is still tense, Francisco, because you look between Chris Progar and Richard Swavely, 14, 15 points separating those two drivers. You count in a new winner, and there's going to be a full-on change still before we get to the end of the week leading up to Charlotte in June.
Still plenty of action here to go through Daytona before we get into the playoffs. But for some drivers like Lawson Peel, like Ross Harlow and Steven Stempien, you're already thinking about those playoffs and what's going to happen. We saw a bit of a schedule a bit ago there with Charlotte, Indianapolis, and Watkins Glen. That's an incredible first round there. That, man, I wish those were the first rounds I was able to have in league performances. I love those 3 racetracks together. And I'm sure that they all enjoy those racetracks together, and we'll have that after Memorial Day weekend. Can't wait to see all that. But, Kenneth, you look at these standings here, Knighton basically 1 point ahead of Chris Progar, and that's the biggest points battle. Swavely's 14 above. But when you look at our session here and who's here and who's not, the person that isn't here is Casey Knighton. So basically, it looks like he'll be out of the playoffs unless some kind of magic happens against him or against Chris Progar to help himself in that situation. But Progar exactly isn't in either by that stature. If someone else were to come here and take the victory, he'll have to battle Richard Swavely on points to try and get in.
And that includes the likes of Chris Cabot, Robert A. Moyer Jr., Kevin Roy, 2 of those who, for right now, we know are confirmed to be in tonight's race. And Chris Cabot, I don't believe, is here. He wasn't here last week at the Worldwide Technology Raceway. So for right now, Moyer and Roy in the top 20 could be among those that go after the victory. And should they do that, it will be a toss-up between Swavely or Progar. It's going to be between who has the worst end of the stick between those two if they end up getting bounced out of the top 16. But here at Daytona, this is a track that is typical to NASCAR racing. It is one of the first built. 1959 is when this 2.5-mile super speedway opened in Daytona Beach. And this track is a behemoth. 2.5 miles, 31 degrees of banking in the corners. It is the track that almost every stock car driver, whether real or virtual, wants to win at with the Daytona 500. And in this case tonight, trying to get a first win at a track so prestigious, but one that is very much on the brink of bringing chaos to the table and allowing very many things to shake up the running order. We saw the first time we were here to open the campaign back in mid-January, Timothy Stubblefield had a crash happen right in front of him. He squeaked away to get his first career drop in the Hammah Cup Series victory. So that's to say, anything could very well happen when you come to a place like this. And as we get down to the final seconds of qualifying and we get right to the grid, I think the anticipation very high for all of those hopefuls trying to either punch their ticket into the playoffs or go into the postseason with a ton of momentum. The drivers are sitting behind the iRacing official with the pace car, so that means it is our time to take you trackside from Daytona Beach and give you the list of the 24 cars that will take the green flag tonight for the 14th time in the regular season of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series. We're on the front row. Is Ethan Fonseca Moreno another pole captured for the rookie driver? Still trying to get his first win in the series, though. He'll be on the inside of his teammate, already race winner this season from Pocono. Steven Maggio will be on the outside in the front row. Back in row number 2, Kip Easley locks into the playoffs with at least a decent stage finish tonight. He's been very quick at the super speedways before. He lines it up inside row 2. Stephen Harlow, who had a roller coaster of emotions happen to him last week at Worldwide Technology Raceway, he'll try and rebound from the outside in position number 4. Then back in row number 3 to lock up the top 5, that is TOW Racing's Justin Erb, still searching for his first win, and Steven Stepien looking to become the first driver since Steven Maggio earlier this season to go back-to-back in race competition after winning at Gateway just last Sunday. Robert A. Moyer Jr., great qualifying effort for 7th. He needs a win to get into the DTH Cup Series playoffs. And Chris Progar barely hanging on by a thread. Car number 7 rolls off from the outside of the row in position number 8. And then Drinkin' Bros Racing has 2 cars inside the top 10. Jason Hastings through 9th, and Craig Parks brings his 17th car to the top 10.
Confirmed playoff driver Ross Harlow is going to be rolling off from the 11th place position with Sean Kalis in the 90 in P12. Brandon Banks will be in the 13th spot with James Kunkel in the 42 alongside of him. 15th goes to the last time we were here at Daytona winner Timothy Stubblefield and Justin Hendry in the 85, who was in contention for the win in that race as well. Warren Kyle Keith is in the 17th spot with Richard Swavely, who's hanging on for a handful of points here to try and get into the postseason. Parker Bland will be rolling off from the 19th position, and Lawson Peel not taking a time as usual every single race this season. He'll be the last of the top 20.
Final 4 in tonight's grid include Eric Schaefer, 21st, 22nd to the DTH Chevrolet of Alex Muscarella, and then filing out the final row in row number 12, Brad Fulham in 23rd, Kevin Roy backing it up from 24th position. He also needs a win in order to get into the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series playoffs for 2025. Well, as the field goes around the 2.5-mile super speedway, let's get a look at our SK Sim Racing race analysis from Daytona. 125 laps from the World Center of Racing, just a little over 312 miles. We clock in a little over 500 kilometers. And here are how the stages will be set. 30 laps apiece for stages 1 and 2. We'll go the rest of the way, 65 laps until the checkered flag comes out. Second trip of the season here from Daytona, and it will not be the final super speedway that we see. Talladega will host the final super speedway race in the middle of the playoffs, third to last event of the season in late July. So KBueno Racing locking up the front row. Moreno has captured several poles in his short tenured Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career, but he has not won a race. His best career finish came at Nashville Super Speedway when he picked up second after beating his teammate Jaden Porter in the final 2 corners for the line. Steven Maggio, 2-time winner this season, I think has some connection issues. He has dropped out from the outside of the front row, so we'll try and keep an eye on where Maggio is and whether he respawns at the back end of this field or not. But for right now, Stephen Harlow will take over the second position on the outside of the front row this time. Gonna be a fun one here from Daytona. Final chance for anyone to make a playoff bid if they are not locked in already. Ethan Fonseca Moreno and Stephen Harlow will be among those at the front of the field as the pace car makes the turn to the left and to the entry of the pit lane. Moreno in control. Let's go regular season racing for the final time here from Daytona Beach.
And as the pack makes their way down to turn 3 for the first time tonight, Kenneth, it's going to be very important to remember we have a shorter field than we have at any of the previous 2 super speedway races. It'll take them longer to get up to speed, and the energy in the draft is going to be very different. So as this race clicks off and the nighttime will approach later on in this one, it's going to be important for those guys to remember and make the adjustments necessary with the smaller group.
And you got to make sure you stay well put in the draft. This track can be very unpredictable with these next-gen cars. There's Stepien giving the push to Stephen Harlow, gets him up in front. And they'll try to make an effort at it for the race lead, but Moreno will fight back hard on the inside with Kip easily follow suit down that bottom lane. You mentioned Stephen Maggio falling out of the group as he was qualified outside of row 1. Well, the Branch Chevy is all the way at the back here in front of Kevin Roy, who qualified dead last in the field. It appeared Maggio had been sent to the rear for possible connection issues, so he lets the entire field through. He'll have to work from the very back, and he won't be in touch with his teammate as they come out of turn 4 to complete the second lap of this race. But we're probably going to see this very early on, Francisco. I mean, only 30 laps between stages 1 and stage 2, so you won't necessarily have long green flag runs that will enable pit stops down the road. They probably will have aggression early, but I think the mainstay for everyone at the front, keep it calm and collected, figure out where the draft is, and figure out how it feels behind the wheel of the race car before you start making any moves.
Yeah, it's early on in this one. Still plenty of ways to go in this one. 2 stages, and the stages themselves are pretty lengthy in their own right, so you have to settle in, just kind of get a feel for everything and not force anything into the anywhere it doesn't need to be. You can get involved in a wreck really early here, and it can make yourself a long 2 or 3 hour night here on this Sunday. So you have to be careful. Make sure you push at the right time in the right form. You can't be too aggressive early on, even though you see the line on the inside moving. If you're Steven Stepien, you can't get too aggressive trying to push the 11 car. It's just not the time for it right now. You see that inside now has cleared away with the first 4 or so. And he gives a little tap to the 11 in front of him, but he's not going to get up there and just continue to shove endlessly like we would see in the final 20 or so in this one. So you see right now, the lead draft has made it its way through with Ethan Fonseca, Kip Easley have done an excellent job to get out there. And how about Justin Erb? And a great start for Robert A. Moyer Jr. You saw him there in that green and black Toyota Camry. He's found himself up into 4th. You talked about it during the grid. He has to win this race to get in, and at least early on right now, he's got himself up in front in the top 5.
And with 7th place on the starting grid, that is his best start in a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series race this season. His other best was 9th place way back in early March at the Chicagoland Speedway, and did pick up a top 10 with all of the attrition that came over the field at Worldwide Technology Raceway. A lot of drivers involved in incidents. Moyer succeeded in surviving, and so captured a big-time top 10 that obviously doesn't change much in terms of his situation. He was must-win then, he's must-win now, but it does give him a bit of extra boost of momentum as he slides to the inside and pulls away in this 4-car pack that will lead the field off turn 4 to complete lap number 5. You're really getting a look at the 88 car that was Steven Stepien for the Droppin the Hammah team, with his teammate Stephen Harlow trying to push right up in front of the very outside lane. And Stepien finally getting that first win of the year at Gateway just last Sunday. The way he was able to do it, and even then, we almost thought in the waning laps that he would get put in a situation where he couldn't go after the race win, although he was the best car. But lo and behold, got around Ross Harlow at the white flag lap in turns 1 and 2, and was able to sail off with the victory, something that he really, really needed. And not a race where he would focus on winning tonight at Daytona, more so focus on what the playoffs will figure out, what the playoffs will be like in the coming weeks. But still a very much necessary win for the Massachusetts native, who is just sliding up high and trying to help the rest of his DTH teammates get into the playoffs. There's Moreno on the inside, that bright pink Red Bull Chevrolet, formerly leading the field. But look at how much momentum the high side got just off that lap alone, just trying to build up the energy. They unleashed it at once, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 Chevrolets on the very high side, and with the first Toyota in the top 5 being James Kunkel, who crashed out on the opening lap of last week's race at Worldwide Technology Raceway. That bright green Amp Energy Toyota trying to get D-Legacy Motor Club their first win of the 2025 season. But for right now, everyone double file. Peak at faint 3 wide. That's Warren Kyle Keith, the bright orange machine in the back. Look at the checkup with the bright blue and white machine, Justin Hendry off of turn 4. No help for Keith, though. He'll file back in line. And so far, 2 by 2, many rows deep, back to turn 1.
And Steven Maggio has already found himself on the edge of the top 10. He's on that outside lane just behind the 85 of Justin Hendry. He's done a good job to move up these positions early on. He is trying to join his teammates up in the front, and he has a brand new teammate behind him, new to KBueno Racing. Starting of this race is the Daytona winner from the previous time, Timothy Stubblefield, for this series. He's going to be a part of that group throughout the rest of the season, and we'll see if that's able to help the 94 in his playoff run.
And Stubblefield in the right place at the right time come Daytona in the final laps of this race. Back in early January, saw the 2 drivers in front go hard into the outside wall, and he just played defense from there on out. So some new friends for Stubblefield to work with. We talked about for so much of that Daytona and even a bit of the Talladega race, how much teammates matter in the grand scheme of things. You know, you look at Drinking Bros Racing, how cohesive they are when they get together. D-Legacy Motor Club, the handful of guys that they have to work together, Droppin the Hammah, TOW Racing. I mean, the list goes on. KBueno Racing as well, with the resurgence and the surgence that they've had as of late. But for Timothy Stubblefield to be able to join a couple of drivers in the BBR camp and have some new friends to work with, very good news for the only driver of a Ford Mustang in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series field. There's a look at the front 5 outside, still about 4 car lengths ahead of Moreno. He'll get the run out of turn 4, but for right now, no real moves other than some slight checkups here and there. But this is going to be key, Francisco, about organizing yourself in the draft. More often than not, the leader isn't as important. It is usually the 2nd, 3rd, maybe 4th car in line with the checkups and the way that you lay out the throttle, and obviously making sure that the temperature is all set and well behind the wheel of the race car. It is so important in how draft plays a role in the way these races usually end, but also how these stages go based on the level of aggression.
And the stages aren't quite a full length of fuel, so you can go the 30 laps and it won't be a problem at all for a tank of fuel to be able to handle. So it's just about maintaining track position and trying to get to the front of the field as quickly as possible to win those stages. So that's a 2nd straight lap off of turn 4 that the 85 of Justin Hendry tags the outside wall. And he's been lucky to not get any damage doing so right now. But there you see side by side momentarily for the top spot was the 11 of James Kunkel, or the 11 of Stephen Harlow, and James Kunkel trying to take the spot away from him, and he's getting a huge push from Ethan Fonseca Moreno.
What a shove in the middle of 1 and 2, gets the Amp Energy Toyota to the head of the field. Harlow and company will try and fight back down the Daytona super stretch, but for right now, James Kunkel gets his first share of laps led here at the World Center of Racing tonight. We haven't seen much of James Kunkel throughout this season at some of the other tracks, but at the super speedways is where Kunkel finds a lot of his success, and his experience definitely shows when he hops onto the track with these guys. The last time he actually led any laps in a race, it came all the way back at the last super speedway race, Talladega, where he led 7 of the laps in that event. And so far, leading a couple here early at Daytona. We're approaching halfway quickly in stage number 1 of the race. Harlow had fallen back, so I think that outside is sort of dissolved in their level of momentum. But remember how they got to the race lead in the first place, Francisco. They got together, they slowed up a bit. Sure, they gave the inside line a run for their money at the end of it, but in the early stages, they kind of let them dictate the story before they started to write a chapter of their own. It seems like the help isn't as fruitful on the outside lane, though, as we see from the bottom. A bunch of cars going all the way back to Brad Fulham in 23rd place. They are all the way back, or rather Kevin Roy in 22nd place. They are all running single file, and that goes all the way through the inside lane. You got to go up to the top to find the last car in that group, Warren Kyle Keith, who currently sits in 15th.
But that outside can and does tend to get pretty big runs off these 31 degrees of banking at this racetrack, and it'll just be a rocket ship down the straightaway. And if you get enough cars up there, or better yet, you get enough of the right kind of help up there, you can make a big run in just 1 lap and get up there and challenge for the top position. Right now, they're hanging around the 5th place position or so, trying to see if they can inch their way back up there without being too aggressive. As we were talking about earlier, can't be too aggressive at the same time. Get yourself in a situation. You see, for a moment, it looked like there was a little bit of a peak going of trying to go 3 wide behind Steven Stempian, but nobody really trying to take a 3 at this stage in the race.
Yeah, it looks like the aggression is very much toned down, but obviously so, given the fact that it's still early in stage 1. Everyone wants to be around for stage points, and you look at the level of field that you see at the front. Obviously, Robert A. Moyer Jr., he's in a must-win situation. He doesn't want to throw his chances at the win out of the window here in stage 1. You look at Kip Easley, who locks in with a stage finish. He really needs one right now. And much better to decide your fate in the first 30 laps and have to wait for the rest of the event to figure out whether you're going to be even locked in properly or not. You want to really seal that fate early. You look at guys like Sean Kalis, it's SK Sim Racing Chevrolet, currently running 13th. He hasn't won a race this season. If he can go out and win, may just be one of those spoilers to get into the playoffs. Justin Hendry, who was mere hundreds of feet from winning this race early January to begin the campaign, he's going to want some type of redemption to get back to victory lane. And then have a guy like Craig Parks, who won the only other super speedway race of the season before tonight at Talladega with help from his teammate Eric Schaefer. He's going to try and go back-to-back at the super speedway type of discipline. That Tide machine currently running in 11th as James Kunkel leads down the super stretch. Everyone single file, about 4 to 5 car lengths ahead of Stephen Harlow, leader on the outside lane.
And Kenneth side by side, or at least from time to time they tend to end up side by side, is the 7 of Chris Progar and the 32 of Richard Swavely. Those are the only two drivers battling each other in points tonight. Swavely with the advantage, I believe, by about 13 or so points ahead of Progar in the standings. So Progar is trying to see if he can close in as many points as possible to get ahead of Swavely in points, not because he needs to make the playoffs. Because of Casey Knighton not being here, Progar is guaranteed that last spot. But guess what? Someone new can win, and if someone new wins this race, that's Progar that's out in that instance. So if he's able to get ahead of Swaley, it'll protect himself against the new winners. Look at the run by the outside lane.
And they're going to surge down into turn 3. Stephen Harlow, say hello, new race leader as they come into the 31 degrees. Wonderful push from Steven Stempien, but they'll even out in the middle of the corner. And look at how Stempien goes about a half a car length high. Look at the wiggle off of turn 4. Had the touch from Chris Progar, that Fastenal Chevrolet hanging third on the outside lane. You don't want to really do that, Francisco. Give a faulty push and create some chaos. We've seen that happen before. A little bit of instability there on the outside lane, but even more so on the bottom. Moreno had to check up now. He's middle 3 to turn 1.
Wow, they got left in the... Look at the bottom. What happened to the entire bottom lane? It just all got shuffled up, and they've lost all their momentum, and it looks as though we could get the energy of possibly going single file, as everybody has just lost momentum now. You see the 85 drop to the inside. Timothy Stubblefield now goes to the outside of him. And the first 5 or so are clear. They're trying to recover that bottom lane. But that was a big moment there in turn 2.
And that was, again, the result of that checkup, just trying to push so hard. And ultimately, it creates a bit of chaos. And obviously, everyone gets stepped out of line. Moreno, in turn, drops to second on the very bottom. Justin Hendry will maintain control at the very top end of the speedway. And Craig Parks, who was just inside the top 10, now squeaks through with a possibility to get to the inside. How about a bit of middle 3 wide action? Warren Kyle Keith finally getting some help right behind him. James Kunkel among those that are going to try to give some assistance. Toyota on Toyota action as Stephen Harlow commands the field by a large margin. All about organization here on these large super speedways. No dice for anyone on the inside. Just trying to put themselves in the right place, but they lost a lot of speed.
In the process, into the top 10 has found himself Stephen Maggio, currently in the 8th or 9th position right there as they continue to fluctuate on the outside lane behind his brand new teammate Stephen Maggio. So now it's a great recovery from what was supposed to be a front row start for the 97. Now he finds himself up in the stage points position, and it's not just him and Stubblefield that are there. Moreno obviously on the bottom, still trying to make it work, and he is giving a huge push here to Justin Hendry, who's going to get him side by side with the race leader and almost clears him off the corner. But Stempien now is going to give the push to Harlow to get him back out and side by side with the 85.
That's all you really need, a good push off of any sort of corner, and it will help big time. For right now, it seems to be the case for car number 85. He'll get the run down the inside. Moreno will try and push him back to the point by at least a couple of feet or so. Very fine margins here at Daytona. And as we cross the line, we'll get the final 10 here in the first stage of the race. We talk about how important points are over the course of the season. It helps Steven Stempien lock into the playoffs even before he won the race at the Virtual Worldwide Technology Raceway in Madison, Illinois. But for right now, Kip Easley and company, they really need stage points to put themselves in the right place at the right time. And Harlow will make himself known on the high side. They'll battle side by side for the race lead. And they'll try and go at it with 10 laps to go in this stage. There's Stubblefield up high. He'll get a bit of help from behind by Steven Maggio. Will they get any sort of other help? The answer will be no, and for right now, top two will stay put into turn 3.
And very quickly, we're getting here towards the latter stages of stage number 1. You see Stempian give him the push right there. It'll clear the 11 of Stephen Harlow out. Stempian almost gets clear, but Hendry's able to stay there. Chris Frogar unable to get to the back bumper of his teammate to try and give him the assistance. And Craig Parks laying back. And when they lay back like that, Kenneth, that's what will kill a run instantly. You're unable to follow through with it truly when there's all that space in there and there's not enough of that arrow push or physical push in certain instances. So that's what's going to hurt him in trying to clear. But he will get clear here, does Steven Stempian, and even Chris Progar. That inside seems to have struggled through turn 2, and it's going to allow them to get all the way through. And looking at the timing and scoring, there is the 19 of Brad Fulham here just in front of this lead group, staying to the outside lane. He's going to be the first car in this race to be taken one lap down, and it's going to be difficult for the field when they catch lap traffic like that, when they go 3 wide, to be able to hang on. And I will say, at a track like Daytona, if they do happen to get 3 wide later in this race and there's a lap car in front, that's where it becomes questionable.
It very much creates chaos because, you know, we talk about at Talladega how much space you have to make it 3 and 4 wide. You can go 4 wide comfortably there at Talladega, but you can't really do so here at Daytona. It's a much thinner racing surface, so even one car on the very outside lane letting the entire field through is going to make everyone adjust on the fly, and those small adjustments can create minuscule moments of mistakes, and just one mistake here at nearly 200 miles an hour could very well cause the big one, to which we've seen a couple of major crashes throughout this series at the super speedways. But for right now, everyone keeps it clean. We'll come to 7 laps to go in the opening stage of the race. Hendry with momentum, and I think Craig Parks just got a piece of the outside wall. Don't know if he got a faulty push from the Timothy Stubblefield machine right behind, but all the way in the sucker hole through the outside lane, Craig Parks nowhere to go.
He was just all by himself when that incident happened. We'll try and see if we get a look at it here. It looked like he was running on his own. I don't think the 94 was necessarily on his bumper. We'll get a look of it there, as on the left side of the screen, it's still the live feed. But there's Parks, and as he goes to travel, just kind of drifts up and gets into the wall a little bit lazily, and that's going to allow Stubblefield and everybody else to go by on the inside. So no contact, just a strange incident there for Parks.
And once he lost all that momentum, all of a sudden Stubblefield made the move on the inside, and then in a bizarre set of circumstances with Stubblefield and Maggio working very well together, Stubblefield kind of let Maggio by on the inside, and for right now, you can see the result of it. Maggio and Warren Kyle Keith, alongside Robert A. Moyer Jr., they're now the last cars in this group that is 10 cars deep. And you go from about 12th on back to Timothy Stubblefield. It's now single file, so they have lost touch with everyone in the main group, and that also includes a driver who started 20th in this race and the 4-time winner this season in Lawson Peel.
Yeah, Lawson Peel only in the 17th spot, probably by design if we had to bet about it. And he is sitting in the 17th spot. There in front of him is Parker Bland, and in front of Parker Bland is the 90 of Sean Kalis, who we were talking about a bit earlier. None of these drivers are in position to get stage points here in a couple of laps time, but they're kind of hanging back and trying to play the strategy of keeping it safe and making sure that they're there at the end. And Lawson Peel, he was able to come away with a top 3 finish here the last time, so we don't doubt his ability of getting a good run here.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of those guys that can always move his way to the front, and you'd think that even at the super speedways, you know, maybe he wouldn't have as much of a chance given the fact that, you know, he is not a typical super speedway racer. It's not a specialty of his by any means necessary, but you know, you think of the way he's been able to put himself in position in those final laps at these bigger tracks. I mean, Talladega helped out with his teammate Craig Parks to get him the victory coming to the final end of that race. At Daytona, he put himself in position to win through the final 20, trying to help Kip Easley go at it for his first win of the year. It was very important, Lawson Peel, to get around with his teammates and make sure that they can go at it for the W. And as he sits right now in the middle of the top 25 or so, now 17th, he's going to try and put himself in a position, but the main goal is for those guys single file to catch up, and I think for the most part, they just caught grasp of the top 11 or so drivers that pulled away for a slim moment. 4 laps to go in stage number 1 from Daytona. There's Harlow, the race leader. Steven Stepien in tow behind. Chris Progar is in third. They have not separated since the drop of the green, and they have also not let go of the other DTH Chevrolet back in line, that Till Valhalla project car of Ross Harlow, who led a ton of laps last week at the Worldwide Technology Raceway. They have stayed 1, 2, 3, 4 on the very top, very loyal with each other for obvious reasons as teammates and co-owners. And then on the inside, it's just a hodgepodge of drivers. Justin Hendry, then Moreno, then Easley, and then you go all the way back to Justin Erb for TOW Racing, Robert A. Moyer Jr. So it's a misfit toy group on the very bottom of the racetrack trying to make something happen. So far, no dice, but they will slightly even out with about the 4th place car down the super stretch.
And for these stages, at least historically, we tend to see the moves being made on the final lap itself. You don't really see a big wind-up for the stage, so I think relatively speaking, you're still seeing most of the field being calm, as there's actually Harlow getting split in the middle. He was peeking down low to try and get in front of the 85, and Stepien saw it. They were going to lose too much momentum, and by goes the 11 through the sucker hole. He's going to lose all the way throughout the top 10 and fall well outside of the top 15 most likely. And look what that did to the outside lane. Stepien, who now leads it, is in the 4th place spot. Progar now getting taken 3 wide by Warren Kyle Keith.
It only took one hiccup and the teammates dissolved. Now it's an absolute brawl through the middle of the top 10. Warren Kyle Keith will make a move through the middle. He'll have help from Steven Maggio right behind, and Progar getting put with absolutely no one to assist until the very last moment. Him and Stephen Harlow get pushed out of line. Now it's Stepien Easley versus Justin Hendry and Moreno down the inside lane. We'll come to the final 2 laps in stage 1, and a huge heap of momentum for the top 2. They pull away by a couple car lengths.
This is where you can see that 2-car tandem really work into fruition. You only need the temperature for about a lap, and that's all it could take. So we see Stepien and the 2-8 leading each other. There's Ross Harlow on the onboard running in 3rd, and I'll tell you what, Moreno has not lifted from trying to help that 85 in front of him. The 20 of Erb has found himself on the outside with the fellowship of his teammates, and Robert A. Moyer Jr. on the inside. You can also throw in the previous pack of cars we were talking about with Parker Bland, the 9 of Lawson Peels in there as well. So all of these guys are still in play for this stage as we're going to begin the final lap here.
So far, the driver on the transfer spot for stage points is Steven Maggio, but obviously side by side with James Kunkel, that could very well change coming down to this final lap of the opening stage. Lawson Peel is puncturing his way in. Eric Schaefer, who we haven't talked about all race long, is at the very back of this train on the inside groove. And the battle for the lead continues. Easley versus Hendry back to turn 1.
And this is really going to hurt Progar more than anything if he is unable to get these points. He was in a good spot to get top 5 stage points, and now Swavely is the one ending up in a good spot to get these points. So if a new winner presents itself, Richard Swavely could hang on. As there you see a checkup there. Erb is going to get turned. Robert A. Moyer Jr. around. Swavely gets a piece of it. The caution flag comes out, and they were side by side for the lead. Who's going to get the stage?
And as they come off the final corner, I believe Kip Easley may have it. And Robert A. Moyer Jr., who needed a victory coming into this race, is slightly torn up. Escapes with minimal damage for what it's worth there off of turn number 3. But as they stacked up, I think there was a bad push. There were 3 wide for a moment, and the caution comes out for the first time. And I believe race control will throw it here. Designated yellow at lap number 30, right at the ring of the bell. We'll see what happened to make this situation happen. And this was the most aggressive they had been all night long, Francisco. And we'll take a look at how this all unfolded, but there definitely was a kind of checkup or so from that outside lane. You'll see that silver and orange machine, 4th car on the outside. Justin Erb get a big push from Warren Kyle Keith. They'll shuffle Ross Harlow out of line, and that's where they bounce off each other. Erb gets a piece of Keith, who gets a piece of Swavely, and then spinning in the middle is Robert A. Moyer Jr. Fantastic job by the field. Their stubble field just barely getting through. Great job by everybody to avoid complete catastrophe, but not the way that Moyer really wanted that to end. And I think as they threw the yellow, Francisco, that will give the stage win by maybe the merest of margins to Kip Easley.
Yeah, it was not much that was in it to have that margin for the stage victory. We'll try and see if we can find it here and present it to you guys so you can see it on the stream. But it was really close, and it did go to Kip Easley, so he'll win the opening stage. And Richard Swavely, despite the spin, will end up in P7, so he'll get some points out of this crucially for his playoff stakes.
and that is easily second career stage win of the season. His first came at Daytona, would you believe it, to start off the year. So a full circle moment for the Missouri native as he tries to lead everyone down pit road for the very first time. We'd anticipate some fuel-only stops, maybe some tires here and there. Lifts of the jacks are available for the drivers on the right side of their race cars, and for right now, we will get everyone set for the beginning of stage number 2 on par right after our first big crash of the night. There is Justin Hendry going out, and with a 13.4 second stop, Justin Hendry, the first man off of pit lane.
So he'll take the race lead with Ethan Fonseca in second. So I think most likely with these stage cautions, Kenneth, you'll see more of these drivers tend to lean towards getting those 4 tires or however many tires that are available, just so that they can take it out of the way, and even if they're going to lose the track position, they can deal with it under caution versus under green. But there is the timestamp with when the caution flag came out. That was your margin of victory in this stage. That's about half a car length there between the 8 and the 85 with the angle.
That is super close, and again, it comes down to the timing of the yellow. They do not race back to the line, and easily, just barely, good help from Steven Stempien right behind to get his second career stage victory, and it comes here at Daytona. Let's get a moment to talk with the driver of the number 8. Kip, you got a copy with us?
Yeah, I do.
All right, Kip. Well, great stage 1 finish. You put yourself right in the conversation in those final laps. How did the car feel out there for the first 30?
You know, it felt pretty good. I mean, I just kind of was riding around. I saw the opportunity to go to the high side there, I think with 3 or 4 left in the stage, and I thought maybe that was my opportunity to try to get out there to either get the stage win, and it worked. It just worked out good.
Well, we knew that going into this race, you would lock into the playoffs with at least a stage finish, and you've been the master at staying in the top 10 when it matters most to award points. With the stage victory, I think for now, we can unofficially say you are officially locked into the playoffs for the DTH Cup Series this year. How good is it to have that stress a bit released here after the first 30 laps, and you can try and go after the win?
Well, definitely is a relief. That was the goal, to come in to just try to get that. Obviously, trying to go for a little redemption here. I don't know if y'all remember in the first race here, coming out of turn 4, I was leading it and lost control, got a bad bump. So it'd be nice to reclaim a win and go back after it. But it's good to get the playoffs kind of behind me at this moment.
Trying to avenge that finish from earlier this year to kick off the season. Kip, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the stage 1 win, and we'll see you later on. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you, and best of luck on the restart.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
So Kip easily gets his second stage victory, and I think the memory is very much still fresh for him from the last time we were here at Daytona, where him, Lawson Peel, a bunch of the other Drinking Bros Racing guys had banded together to get him to the front, and easily was in contention to win right off the final corner on the final lap before things went awry. They crashed off the corner, and that, of course, helped Timothy Stubblefield get the victory. So we'll double up for the restart. Hendry, the winner off pit road. He will command the field back to the green flag. We'll kick off stage 2 here, and we'll go all the way to lap number 60. Ethan Fonseca Moreno, the pole sitter, who had been helping Justin Hendry on the bottom lane. He'll take over the outside of row 1. And there's Chris Progar, who was formerly top 5 for most of the stage. He will recycle back in 22nd as a result of his most recent pit stop. I think he spent quite a long time there, 23.1 seconds in the stall.
He had a pit penalty, at least a self-claimed pit penalty. He said he drove through too many pit stalls and requested an EOL, so that's why Progar's down in second to last.
Well, hopefully he's able to get back up through the field. We saw that quick moment that put him back outside the top 5 with Stephen Harlow and himself getting shuffled out. He will be one of the 3 cars single file at the very back end of the train, but focus up front. Justin Hendry leads us to the green flag restart.
Pretty spread out restart at the front, must be said, between your first top 10. See multiple car lengths in between, so no real momentum at the front. Whoever can get hooked up first is really going to start the momentum train. And you see right there on the outside, Moreno trying to hang on with Stempien, and it's Ross Harlow that's in tow with Warren Keith. Now Stempien gets to the back bumper of the 87 and is going to shove Ethan Fonseca well out in front. There's the checkup on the inside, but now Moreno's clear for the top position. There's Steven Maggio behind Steven Stempien in the process, so a couple of the KBueno Racing drivers are finding themselves up at the front. And would you look at that, 4th on the outside lane Lawson Peel.
He can never be denied. Lawson Peel, the 4-time winner, right in the thick of things as we kick off stage number 2, right on cue from what we usually see here from him in most of the races in this series. But it's 1, 2, 3, 4, make it merely 5 cars clear of the inside lane. Back to turn 1, there was a big shuffle from the super stretch. Stephen Harlow made the move from down low, kind of made his move up high. Warren Kyle Keith followed suit. There is not enough organization on the inside to make any sort of conversation happen between the 2 lanes. The bright pink Moreno car leads it through to turn 3. Now Keith wants to back out of line. He'll get to the front end of Justin Hendry's machine. 2 Toyotas leading the bottom to turn 3.
If they can get any momentum, they'll get side by side up with the front, and it'll make it contentious. And Lawson Peel sees this. He goes to the middle, goes to the inside of Steven Maggio, tries to drag him back, and now Warren Kyle Keith will get to the back bumper of the 9 and try to push him out front. Now Maggio goes to the bottom, trying to cover that lane. We'll see what Moreno does.
Moreno with a decision to make. Remember, Maggio had qualified outside of row 1, but had to give it up with an end-of-line penalty due to internet connection issues, but he is very much back in this game. He'll make the move to the inside as the bullet down low. Moreno will control the high side, but I think that's maybe what you really want to do here, Francisco, is you want to control the rhythm of both lanes as teammates. You often see drivers' teammates go nose to tail. They usually work very well together, but if you can control both lanes, that could be big-time business, but the Toyotas want nothing to do with that. Keith and Kunkel aggressively make the move to the inside. They want the lead.
It is difficult to control both lanes, though, Kenneth, because if you're just one driver and you just have each other on the front, you can get splits. There's Warren Kyle Keith taking it through the middle, making some contact with Kunkel and Stephen Harlow, going 3 wide through the middle. That's going to allow Steven Stempian and Ethan Fonseca to kind of go away if they don't resolve this very quickly. See, Kunkel gets clear for the top spot, but Harlow and Keith remain side by side. Lawson Peel says he's had enough of this. He's going to drop back as Maggio recovers up to the 4th spot. So the front of the field very spread out now.
And they dissipated very quickly. Look at the top 2, how much of a gap they put on to James Kunkel there with all of that shuffling, all of that movement, the volatility taking part. And we mentioned the organization, how much that really matters here at the super speedways. You get a lack of organization, someone bounces out of line and kind of disrupts the rhythm. Well, that's the results of it. You get huge gaps and drivers that don't really know where they're going to be in the middle of a line. And I think a lot of that, Francisco, came down to Keith not really wanting to work. With the Brand 97 of Stephen Maggio, they had a bit of action last week at Gateway where Maggio caught the quarter panel of Keith, sent him spinning through 1 and 2. And I think there was even some more drama between the 2 in the weeks leading up to Gateway. So a lot of stuff happening between those 2 drivers, and the St. Augustine, Florida native of Keith, I don't think he really sits on good terms with Maggio right now, so he's trying to do whatever he can to move up through the field. So far, no dice. Moreno still the leader.
Yeah, some beef there between those 2, and we'll see what in the coming races if they're able to kind of hash it out on the racetrack and still have clean battles with one another. You don't want to see Warren Kyle Keith, who ends up being a playoff driver here starting in 2 weeks' time. You want to see his playoffs end due to some unfortunate contact as a result of a rivalry. But here at the front, there's James Kunkel on his onboard and what he sees with the 88 and 87 in front of him. And you see just how aggressively Stempian's able to get up to the back bumper. And it's with everybody. We saw this at Talladega. We saw this at Daytona at the start of the season. Stempian, one of the more aggressive, but also just unable to cause many incidents by pushing. So if you want anybody that's going to drive you up to the front of the field, it's got to be 88.
Yeah, Stempian has been the most reliable pusher tonight. I mean, whether it be from his teammates or not, you know, Stempian is one of those guys that can go out and win these super speedway events, but he won't have help. There comes James Kunkel, switch over to the high side. Only problem is the Amp Energy Toyota will not have assistance. Perhaps his D-Legacy Motor Club teammates could help him. That's Parker Bland, the UPS Toyota on the outside. Maybe Keith will try and follow up suit. They'll aim for a 3-wide move, but Kunkel will back out of line, and he'll follow right in suit with the Stephen Harlow machine sitting 3rd on the top groove. Look at the bottom alley looking to make a move down the bottom end. There's Maggio with big-time help from Hendry, but so far no stopping the 87 and the 88. Look at the push down the super stretch, and they're ahead by 2 car lengths.
And now when they check up, that's where the bottom's going to get its advantage. You see Hendry locked up to the back bumper of the 97, and they get a big run to their own right to get side by side with Stempian. Now Stempian gets into the back of Ethan Fonseca, trying to push him clear, and you can see it in this stage already. The intensity has picked up. These drivers are being a lot more aggressive with the pushing and shoving.
And we're still 20 laps away from stage 2, by the way. So still a lot of racing to go. I think they have gotten very comfortable at working around with each other. And does that phenomenon kind of happen, Francisco, when you're in the middle of a super speedway race where you kind of tiptoe through the first 10 to 20 laps, but by the time the next run comes in, you feel a lot more comfortable and thus creating much more aggression down the rest of the race?
It absolutely does. You just feed off the energy that the race gives you. If you feel the energy picking up, then you'll pick up with it. And if it's cooling down, you'll try to maintain that kind of energy as well. So if you see the aggression picking up, sometimes drivers will go away from it. And if you see it tuning down, that's when you want to be aggressive. So there's no right or wrong strategy. It's just all about making sure whichever one you choose keeps you in the clean.
I can tell you right now, the aggressors happen to be the two Toyotas here. Kunkel and Keith in very different ways.
Look at that run.
Super aggressive, and here they come inside charge to turn 2. They've got the race lead in droves. Now Keith wants the lead. He'll take a turn up high. Kunkel with the block down the super stretch, and they'll stay nose to tail. Moreno wants the middle. We're 3 wide, entering turn 3.
He's not satisfied with that. He wants to try and go to the middle, and he's doing a great job of standing there on his own, but now Stempien fills the gap, so they're 3 wide truly there. As Hendry clears on the bottom with Maggio, there's Kip Easley trying to cover well, and Parker Bland, she's done a great job to get into the top 10.
The allegiances happen to be apparent early on in this race, whether it be Stempien and Moreno from this second stage, whether it be Kunkel and Keith, or whether it be Hendry and Maggio. They're starting to surge up to the front, and they brought the stage 1 winner, Kip Easley, in the midst of that as well, and Parker Bland race high top 5 for the UPS Toyota Camry. She's done a great job at staying alive in this race so far, and possibly to help James Kunkel move up to the front. But the teammates have not found each other on the racetrack quite yet. There's Timothy Stubblefield, that black and red Ford Mustang, hanging 3rd on the inside groove. Maggio may get ditched here by Justin Hendry entering turn 3, and it may be by design, but Moreno doesn't go with Maggio. The 2-time winner gets stuck back on the high side. Moreno looking for the lead off turn number 4.
He's got the lead, but a surprise that he left his teammate out there on the high side like that. And now Maggio loses all the track position. We've seen him recover once already. He's going to have to do it again. And we'll see if he remembers that later on in this one. As there you see now on the inside, Hendry, who was leading this race, is all the way back down, just barely hanging on to the top 5 position as Kip Easley gets his way behind the 85 machine. And you see the sun setting, Kenneth, already on lap 44 of this one. It's going to become fully dark by the time this race ends. So I'm pretty sure as the night progresses, that equally with that, we'll see the aggression pick up as it already has.
And the track will cool down, and for what it's worth, that will help just a little bit. This isn't a track that's very dependent on tire wear and handling, but we've seen often the drivers get fresh tires on pit road just because they want a little more assurance behind the wheel. These next-gen cars, it's a very, very interesting characteristic with these machines compared to, you know, the Gen 6, Gen 5 era of NASCAR stock car. They're much more twitchy. They're much more unpredictable in the draft, and so you can very much get into a big crash just by being bounced out of line by the air, or if the car just gets a little bit twitchy, get into a problem, either loose or tightness, and it becomes a big time problem. But for right now, everyone seems to be okay running double file. There's Ross Harlow, who led a ton of laps to finish in the runner-up position at Gateway, led only 12 of the many laps we ran there, but still was one of those dominant forces that put himself in position to win. Got passed by Stempien, his teammate there, coming through turn number 1 and 2 on the final lap of the race. And Harlow trying to search for his second victory of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season, already very much locked into the playoffs this year, but still looking for a bit of extra momentum as he comes into this one. Last time we raced at a super speedway, Harlow had a great starting position, P2, but ended up out of the race in 24th. So looking for somewhat of a comeback tonight in that Till Valhalla Project Chevy Bowtie that runs 3rd on the outside lane for right now. We'll come into the final 14 laps of stage 2. We'll go to lap 60 before we award the top 10 with point standings positions. And for right now, the inside with no response. They'll try to build it up here in 3 and 4. The bright blue and white machine of Justin Hendry is peeking through the 3rd. May get through to 2nd, trying to look for the lead back to turn 1.
Stempien has just been that good of a pusher, being the second place car, that it's really made it difficult for the inside lane to get any momentum, to get alongside, and let alone clear for the top position. So that's a tall order for stage 1 winner Kip Easley. They'll gain on the corner like this, and you see they gained a ton. Moreno thought about going down there, but he's got a great help from Stempien here. And as they go side by side, you see the push from Easley into the back of Hendry. Stempien eventually will get into the back of the 87. That could just send Moreno clear for the top spot, but now that Hendry is side by side, that's going to drag both lines back and going to make it a fairer fight for the inside lane, but there's Stempien with that huge shove to get him out there.
It's a very good look at what Keep Easley is going through, and a very solid shot of what the driver experiences as the second, maybe third car in line when you're the pusher and not the push-E, not the driver just at the front trying to hold on to the organization, but maybe the guy that's the catalyst in all of that in Easley as he goes through. A very great onboard look with Easley as he slides into turns 1 and 2, right behind Justin Hendry. And, you know, this view definitely doesn't do it justice, Francisco, because when you're behind the wheel on iRacing, chances are you can't really see beyond that car in front when you're pushing them as close as Easley is to Hendry's back bumper entering turn 3. The most you can see, maybe a bit of the asphalt entering the corner, but that's all you get.
And that's why they make the top of the spoiler that transparent piece. It's so that the driver in front can look behind, but also it can help the driver behind look in front of the car. As you see, that got squirrely there on the inside. The spoiler really blocks from you being able to see out in front. Otherwise, back in the day, because the spoilers were so much smaller and the cars were a little bit taller, you could use your window to do all sorts of signals. You saw drivers back in the day use it for other kinds of signals, aren't so kind, but it was an advantage for you to just look forward and look ahead. I know that on the road, when you're behind somebody on the highway, if you want to see if there's anybody in front, you have to go either left or right to try and get a peek at the line in front of you. But some cars, if they don't have too dark of tinted windows on them, you can actually look right through them and see what's in front.
It's a unique perspective at the Super Speedways, one that is unique to the oval style. And for right now, as we cross the line for lap 50, Moreno's still in the lead. No change for the top spot yet. No real moves throughout the top 10. You know, we saw a lot of that shuffling happen with Keith and Kunkel playing the aggressor role, Maggio getting shuffled out of line, but ever since then, they have stayed double file without any significant changes for all of the other drivers around you. We'll get another look here. This is from the race leader right now, and Ethan Fonseca Moreno, as he tries to deal with the sun here in Daytona Beach, Florida. That's one of the things that happens here at the World Center of Racing. That sunset could take you for a ride. You could easily get blinded, and you see the sun beaming down on the 31 degrees of banking. He'll creep up with James Kunkel right alongside as they enter turns 3 and 4, but then all that shade comes around in turn 4 and the sun comes right back out to the tri-oval.
And it's worse in the February race, Kenneth, because you have to contend with the sun being in a different position than it is in August, like it is in the sim right now. When it's in February, the sun is a little bit more in line with the front straightaway itself, so it lasts longer than it does there. It kind of hides behind the banking, and the banking at times seems to be taller than the actual grandstands when you're in the seat of the race car. So it's actually better off when you're in the spring race here for the opening race than at this time of year when the sun starts going down like this. And they'll have to contend with it for only a handful more of a laps. Then we get under caution for the stage, and it should be a little bit better for the last for the first start of stage 3, and eventually the lights will turn on and things will begin to get dark, but also the lights will turn on and we'll see the sparks flying, as the sparks could fly here in this stage with 9 to go.
It's getting sketchy though in the inside lane. I don't know if you saw that, Francisco, but the many bumps from Warren Kyle Keith nearly sent Kunkel spinning to the outside wall as he was trying to be aggressive, give the pushes to the Amp Energy car and get him up front, but they had misaligned several times, and we've seen a lot with these next-gen cars. One off-angle push, either from the car behind you or the car in front, could easily creep up, make unbalance happen, and there could be a very big situation, a very big crash as a result. For right now, Kunkel maintains the inside, but with no momentum to boot. Moreno still the leader. 8 laps to go in the stage.
Yeah, you don't want to be offset on either side, for that matter, with this car. Despite what they tell you about leaning on the right side better than leaning on the left, you don't want to lean on either side. The bumper on the rear of these race cars are rounded enough that you can spin them either way by giving them a wrong push offset of the bumper. So if you're trying to push someone to get up there, don't get on that right side, especially. You want to try and stay as close to the middle as possible. You see Warren and Kyle Keith is leaning on the right side, and unfortunately the 42 can't deal with it anymore, and he has to bail, and that kills the inside lane's momentum, which was going to segue into my next point. If you keep doing that repeatedly on the right side like that, Kenneth, being the car behind, you can actually side draft the car in front of you, and we saw that happening. That's why the 42 had to bail.
And And they all slow down. Look at the distance here between Keith, Hendry, and then going all the way back a couple of car lengths to the 3-Cheese Chevrolet of Kip Easley, the Stage 1 winner. So the inside is basically gone at this point. Only about 4 or 5 cars stay loyal to the double yellow line. Everyone else has shuffled up high. And that's exactly what happens when a faulty push checks everyone up. Maybe some second life here. Parker Bland trying to ignite a move on the inside. She's got to have help, and she will in the form of that Jurassic Park Tracker Boats Toyota Camry of Warren Kyle Keith. He's been the most aggressive pusher the entire race, and it's worked out for the most part. It's gained them track position, but he will pick up. Blocked there by Timothy Stubblefield. Couldn't get there, and they're 3 wide in the back.
And that's going to allow the first 5 or so cars to really get an advantage here. Stubblefield will clear for 6th. He's about half a second behind the main draft in the process, and he could get the help here off the corner. You see a couple cars scratch of the outside wall. And Bland now leads the inside with Richard Swavely, who's once again in position of getting stage points here and helping his playoff situation should there be a new winner. Which, even if Moreno wins this race, he wouldn't be playoff eligible just because those KBueno Racing drivers joined too late into the season. But if you look anybody in the top 10 that could win this race and have a chance to make the playoffs, you can include Sean Kalis, you can include obviously Chris Progar, who's found himself up in the top 10 as well, but Justin Erb, you can throw in James Kunkel, and even I believe it was the 40, somebody else was up there and I just missed them, but they're able to win this race and get up there. And Stubblefield getting a huge run in the process as you're watching from the Charlie Byer photography on board of Ethan Fonseca. Stubblefield's getting the push from Warren Kyle Keith to try and challenge for the stage here with 5 laps to go.
Seems like a new challenger emerges on the bottom lane with help from that 78 car, but it didn't work out with Bland. Could it work out here with Stubblefield? They have more cars there. It's about 5 to 6, maybe 7 cars counting down there, one of them being Richard Swavely, who got into this race 14 points above that sacred cut line, and he really needs a solid race tonight. Perhaps a race victory, but he's going to get shuffled through the middle. Bland got checked up, so did Hendry, and so it kills more momentum, loses more patronage down the inside, and they just can't find a groove right now with 4 laps to go in the stage.
It'll just be tough to make it work on the bottom like that. They're going to need a good push, and Warren Kyle Keith has struggled to deliver some good pushes, and you see it reflecting on the outside lane's ability to just continue to get more and more cars clear. And I think it's at this point they could go single file, and all it's going to take is 1 or 2 guys that trust each other and can make it work to try and shoot it to the bottom. There you see the onboard with Richard Swavely, who's just outside of the top 10 for stage points in this stage. He'll jump up to the outside of Parker Bland and James Kunkel and Timothy Stubblefield, and that should be enough to get Richard Swavely up into the top 10 now, as you see a move for Warren Kyle Keith all the way down below the yellow line, as there's now Swavely trying to follow him for a position, and they're 3 wide a little bit further back. That's not going to help them make that run.
Keith and Swavely nearly bounced off each other, and that puts James Kunkel in the middle 3 abreast. He's got no help, so he'll be sucked back into the rest of this field. Meanwhile, Steven Maggio qualified outside row 1. He has lost touch with the main group. He's all the way back dead last and 23rd, as nobody in this race has fallen a lap down or more as of the moment. We'll cross 2 laps to go in the second stage of the race. Moreno in search of his second stage victory of the season, and one that will steal the opportunity away from a guy like Steven Stepien. Harlow in the top 5, and even a bit of Sean Kalis, that 5th car running the SK Sim Racing Chevrolet, just hunting down the rest of the field up in front. And would that be incentivized for the other drivers, Francisco, to be more aggressive at the end of this stage? Because I don't think anyone wants playoff points awarded to Moreno, who basically can't really accept them because he won't lock into the playoffs as he hasn't made enough starts.
It can, but we'll see what it's worth at the same time, because you definitely want the playoff points on your side to go up there and challenge Lawson Peel with his 4 race wins and the amount of playoff points he's been able to build up with those wins. But at the same time, if you're Steven Stepien, Ross Harlow, or even Stephen Harlow, how much are you willing to risk for that 1 playoff point in the middle of stage 2 versus the amount that you can win this race? So I think a lot of that is going through their minds. You see Jason Hastings making a run on the inside with Warren Kyle Keith. He's got a solid run in the building there on the inside, trying to get up into the top 5, but they keep swerving way too much on these straightaways to really make a consistent run. That's going to hurt them here coming to the final lap of the stage.
It's stability versus instability from the top side to the bottom, and the In-N-Out Burger Chevrolet, for the first time tonight in the top 10 since he started in the top 10 at the drop of the green flag from 9th. He stepped into the top seven right now, 6 potentially here. And we get to the final lap of stage 2 from Daytona. No one can outlast the outside lane for right now. It's still 3 to 4 car lengths to the first battle for side-by-side action with
Stempion's laying back
down the inside. Stepien wants to move. He's got teammate help down the super stretch. They'll potentially peek to the inside. They'll stay in touch with Moreno. Car to the inside. That's Parker Blaine getting shuffled out of group to the bottom end of the double yellow line. But as they chase through 3 and 4 for the final time, will there be a shot at it for the stage victory? Moreno up front, playing the defense. Hastings with a charge down low, but there will be no match. For the second time this season, Moreno is a stage winner.
Look, it looked like most of that top 5 was content at running where they were. It almost looks like there was trouble after the line. I think Kalis drifted down and nearly made contact with somebody else there, but Ethan Fonseca with as easy of a stage win there coming to the line at Daytona as you'll ever see. Normally you're making some kind of move for defense, and like I said, most of that top 5 looked like they were content riding where they were, and crucially, Richard Swavely in the 10th place position, and Chris Progark walks away with 5th place stage points position. So that'll most likely level out to somewhere around the 20 or 15 to 20 point mark, almost to what exactly we started this race with. So for Chris Progar and his opportunity to get ahead of Richard Swavely, it's going to take a DNF from Swavely and a top 5 finish from Progar to get ahead of him on points outright. Otherwise, Progar is going to have to either hope someone new doesn't win or take the win himself.
Yeah, that's the big point of it all, is they are bracing for the worst, in which the worst case scenario is that there's a new winner from beneath the top 15 or outside of the top 20 that are eligible for the playoffs to go out and win the race. But let's say if Moreno or Maggio go out and take the W, they are not locking in a spot in the playoffs, given the fact that they joined very late in the season, thus not eligible to make the postseason and run for the championship. So they would prefer Moreno or Maggio or someone that's already won this season or somebody that's already locked in the playoffs via points to go on and win a race, because it wouldn't affect the trajectory for both Swavely and Progar, to which, because Casey Neiden is not in the race, they would both get in and they would both have 15th and 16th without a problem. They just got to worry about if there is a new winner, to which right now it hasn't been the case. So Ethan Fonseca Moreno, who became the 11th different stage winner this year after capturing his first a couple of weeks back, ends up with his second stage victory, and the field will come down pit road once more under the yellow flag. This is a very routine caution sequence, and with the 100% fuel on board of the race cars for everyone this evening, obviously no concern for pit road for either of the 30-lap sprints, but 65 will double them up and add a couple of change pennies in there, and we will extend the race for a chance of pit road strategy should we stay green. It was a very clean stage 2 and only one on-track yellow, and that was right at the marker of lap 30. So everyone is in this time by, and jacks are up on the right side of the Red Bull Chevrolet. Everyone's going to come in, some of them for Fresh Eagles. I think everyone is taking tires here, Francisco, and as the run out of the pit road happens, I think Moreno will have them beat, and he will. Easy run.
Take the tires now, because most likely if we do get that green flag pit stops, it's at best right sides or no tires at all, with fuel going into these race cars to maximize. It is going to be a one stop in this race. We'll just have to see what lap they choose to pit on, as there is a window for that fuel mileage game. And while we have this opportunity to caution, let's talk to our stage 2 winner, Ethan Fonseca Moreno. And Ethan, that was actually a pretty simple stage win there, relatively speaking, for Daytona standards. You've had a good car. You've maintained it at the front from pole position. What do you need to win this race?
I feel like track position is going to be key here. I know people say it's not, but I think especially here, people just kind of want to like stay in line and all that and try to hold their position at the front. I think it's just going to be very important to hold the lead here for as long as I can. And I think especially for this last run, fuel is going to play a factor here for pit stop. So going to be looking into doing that.
You mentioned it there, that fuel is going to play a big role in this final stage. Should it go green, there's going to be a green flag pit stop in there. So what are you and your teammates kind of talking about right now under this caution, trying to make that strategy work?
We've discussed saving fuel to shorten the amount we can take in the pit road so we can gain some time. Not sure about... We might try to get together here, but we'll see how things play out.
Appreciate the time you take with us, Ethan, and good luck in this last stage.
Thank you.
That's our stage winner, Ethan Fonseca Moreno. He's led 33 laps and counting now as they cross the start-finish line. The lights are off from the iRacing official pace car, so we'll go green next time by with our 65-lap-long stage. We'll officially go 60 laps because we will get the green here at 65 laps complete. Moreno and Stepien will be facing the inside and outside of row 1, and a very good point that we've pointed out throughout this race is how good Stepien has been at pushing. I think he's got a little bit to learn if he wants to be the leader, just because, you know, he had the bad memories from Talladega where he was leading the race on the inside and then kind of got moved out of the way a little bit from a faulty push and got spun around in the middle of the field. He's been the best pusher of the night, and so far it has paid dividends. The 88 car has been one of the strongest when it comes down to being right behind another, and I think if you want to be the race leader, you want to have Steven Stepien right on your rear bumper. Well, we talked about the last time we were at the World Center of Racing at Daytona, and it happened all in a blur off of turn 4. Here's Justin Hendry and Kip Easley run to the line, hard into the wall, and Stubblefield ended up with the victory. Lonesome car to break free for his first career, dropping the Hammah Series victory. And in all of that, Lawson Peel, the 4-time winner this season, ended up second. And for right now, the driver trying to retain his Daytona crown will restart on the outside of, I believe, the 4th row. He'll be in either P8 or P9. Great memories there for Stubblefield, though. Always special to win at Daytona, Francisco. And I think with a finish like that, it was so chaotic. We thought it was going to be a drag race, maybe one of the closest finishes we'd ever see. And then they just tangled off turn 4, and it was such a heartbreaking moment for both Easley and Hendry. But for Stubblefield, a moment of surprise, but one that he welcomed with open arms for the W, and that started off this season with a bang. We'll try to finish out this last stage as cleanly as possible with Ethan Fonseca Moreno and Steven Stepien at the head of the field. Green flag at lap 65.
A good jump there for the 87. You could expect them to see him move up in front of Stepien here or cover the line that he feels he has to, because Ross Harlow actually got a great launch on the bottom. He'll be the first to get up to Ethan, and he'll clear himself. Those 3 cars will actually clear Stepien on the outside, the inside lane behind him, all the way back to Justin Hendry. So you can see here, Hendry is going to try to make the bottom work as your top 3 shuffle out to the outside lane to cover that top side. So immediately single file up at the front of the field, and you can already tell that this race is going to be different from now and the checkered flag. The sun has set behind the horizon. You can see a little bit of orange in the skies, but the lights are on. So now it is go time. The sparks will fly as Ross Harlow goes for the lead.
This is the first time we see a lead change from Moreno with anyone else, and Ross Harlow for the first time tonight will take the race lead at lap 66. Moreno has help in the form of Warren Kyle Keith, but so far no proper organization, and look at that push to turn 1. Stepien not giving any sort of space to the back bumper of the 16.
And there's teammates. Those are all teammates that are aligned behind Stepien that include the 11 of Stephen Harlow, Chris Progard, Justin Hendry, even though he's not officially on that team. He's a good alliance, as there's actually the 20 of Justin Erb now going 2 laps down. Not sure what happened to the 20 recently to have this happen to him, but he's 2 laps down and was letting the field go on the apron. But they've all closed up to Steven Stepien now. Moreno's fighting tough on the outside, trying to make sure he can put up a run. Warren Kyle Keith has done a good job of giving him that help, but Stephen Harlow in the process has also closed the gap up to Stepien to try and make that Droppin the Hammah team formidable on the inside lane.
And so far, no response from those guys at the top. We mentioned how Keith had been the main pusher for those on the inside with hope for the end of stage 2, but there's a lot of instability there, swerving across the speedway, and Keith wants nothing more to do with Moreno here. He'll swap to the outside, try to put the Red Bull machine in the sucker hole. Stubblefield will help, and here comes the transfer. All 4 of those Chevrolets from Harlow, Stepien, the other Stephen Harlow, and then Chris Progard making the move up high. So just like stage 1, top 4, all of them affiliate teammates.
Well, these are the actual teammates now that are 1st through 4th right now, so it's going to make it very difficult for anybody to try and get up there. Stubblefield tagged the outside wall off of turn 4. It's going to cost him some momentum in spots, but Moreno peaks to the bottom. He'll have Warren Kyle Keith to push him as well. Kunkel joins the fight as well with the back of Warren Kyle Keith, who now abandons Moreno and goes to the outside himself to move up into P5. So clearly very very established here that Droppin the Hammah is going to control this stage.
It's top 3 dropping the Hammah, then
Oh,
fourth
and
place is
contact between
TOW
Timothy
Racing.
Stubblefield and the 18 of Robert A. Moore Jr. They're crashing down the back straightaway. It's a long negated crash, and finally the 18 goes around. They had made contact well before turn 2, and they just did not get off one another, and eventually after just staying like that all the way down the back straightaway, Robert A. Moyer Jr. goes around and brings out the first caution for incident since the end of the stage 1.
Such a tough break for Moyer Jr., who spun around to bring the first caution of the race out in stage 1. And much more damage here on the Freaky Fast Broadcasting Toyota Camry. You see the crinkles there on the front end of the car. Splitter, I think, is hitting the ground just a little bit. And Moyer Jr. in the heart of the accident for the second time tonight and are just second on track yellow of the race. So let's see how this all unfolded between the main leaders. And this is Stubblefield, car number 94 on the high side, and Moyer Jr. in the middle, and just bounced off the inside car. That's Justin Hendry there, and they were side by side for so long, making contact until finally the dam broke. There's Parker Bland hitting the brakes and getting away from it barely, and it's just about a single car spin as Stubblefield just stayed where he was, right up against that outside barrier, and there was nothing else that the 18 car could do. Here's a look on board from the rear camera with Robert A. Moyer Jr. There's the initial contact, and they're still making contact all the way down the straightaway until right about there.
It's almost like he let go of the wheel from just after making the contact, because around he goes into the 94, and they just stay together, glued to each other, like if they didn't want to separate. And we'll try and get one more look at it here with the 94 of Timothy Stubblefield off of turn 2. You see Moreno's going to move up to fill that gap up in front of Stubblefield. He tags the wall, and then out of nowhere comes the 18, and well, there they go, still making contact. Eventually the 18 just edges out in front, and Stubblefield just says, all right, goodbye.
I think they would have stayed side by side making contact had they not let off the gas pedal, and they just kept going. I think Stubblefield wanted to get out of the thing, so he just hopped on the brakes for a quick split second, and that is what shifted the momentum to Moyer Jr. in the spin, while the leaders, at least some of them, come down pit road. Moreno had been the first to let them all through, and a quick call for fuel. 5.9 seconds for the former race leader and stage 2 winner.
He was talking to us about it during that stage break, that they were thinking about trying to save fuel to make it to the stage, not necessarily without pitting, but rather get yourself in a better fuel situation, better fuel numbers. We saw KBueno Racing, obviously with a larger group, being able to successfully pit under the green flag and make a great strategy call at Talladega back and 4 wide. However, they don't have as many numbers here, but I think if they can shorten the amount of time that they're spending on pit road almost completely, then that basically negates the amount of time that they'd lose by being a 3 or 4 car group.
Well, the good news for Moreno is that he does have help. Top 11 on back, or 11th on back, they came down pit road, so they strand the first 10 drivers by coming in for fuel only. And it does give the opportunity for Moyer Jr. and Stubblefield to get their bit of damage repair and spend that time, give up the track position, but they will have other guys with them on the same strategy, because, while you're on pit road, always a good decision to maybe get some tires and fuel if you need it for extra reassurance, and that does settle to be the case for a lot of those guys at the back. So we will try and go for the restart at lap 72 projected, should we see the lights come off from the iRacing official pace car, with Ross Harlow in control of the race. Stempian and Stephen Harlow round out the current top 3. Well, we got a question from one of our very own. That's our good friend and colleague at KBueno Racing Network, Charlie Byer. He says, happy Indy 500 week. 2 questions. Predictions for the race overall and prediction for the winner. I think that's the very loaded 2 questions, Francisco. It happens next Sunday, the 109th Indianapolis 500. Do you have any predictions? I think there's still a bit to go before we can kind of get those storylines down, but do you have any predictions for right now? Like too early predictions?
I think there's definitely plenty too early, but I will say I'm excited to go to my first Indianapolis 500 next Sunday. I'll be flying out to Nashville this Friday and driving up throughout Tennessee and Kentucky before eventually getting to Indianapolis on Sunday morning. I'll be doing a couple of other things on my way through there, but I can't wait. It's my first time ever going to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I've heard the facility is awesome. Just absolutely top tier stuff. I can't wait to meet Charlie Byer there next week and eventually come back through Chicago. So I will say that predictions-wise, probably too early for me to start throwing out any predictions. But I will say I think it would be monumental if I did get to see a Kyle Larson IndyCar win.
That would be insane if Larson could go out and win one of those 2 races. He's trying for the double again this year. Last year, it didn't pan out because of the rain delay in Indianapolis that, delayed the start of the race, so he couldn't make the beginning of the Coke 600, and Justin Allgaier had to fill in for the 5-car on the NASCAR side of things at Charlotte. But yeah, I'm excited for you to take on Indianapolis later on this weekend. A lot of people say that's a bucket list race to go to. It's a crown jewel, and it's one of the most important races that happen across the country every single year. And what a great day for racing, too. You have the Monaco Grand Prix in the morning, you have the Indy 500 in the mid-afternoon, and then the Coke 600 to be the nightcap of the day. It's going to be awesome. As for my predictions, I'm hoping for a long green flag race that ends up in strategy. It's been a while since we've seen a kind of Alexander Rossi type strategy victory, so I'd be very excited to see a race like that transpire. Still have some strategy though, 2 alternate strategies between the top 10 and then 11th on back. Green flag waves at lap 72 from Daytona. The Harlows get a good jump down the inside to turn 1.
And they'll clear up, they'll move up over in front of Steven Stepien, and that leaves Warren Kalkis as the only car on the bottom. Justin Hendry going to close in the gap, but not before he loses a couple of positions. There you see the push from the 85 to the 78, and you can see the outside, even though they might not have as many cars, they're definitely more strung together, and Warren Kalkis not trying to take the help, and that's going to end up hurting him as now Kunkel goes to the inside, and once again it's those Droppin the Hammah quadrit sitting on the outside lane as John Kalis looks to try and fill that gap on the outside to make it 5 consecutive Droppin the Hammah team members on the outside.
And so far, they haven't made it work, and now the Toyotas are itching to respond. James Kunkel, who has led a good portion of this race, fires back on the inside to the tri-oval. He's got to look at second, and now to the quarter panel of Ross Harlow to turn 1. Second time we've seen James Kunkel with another great run down the inside looking for the lead, and he's got it. James Kunkel, new race leader from Daytona.
And both him and Warren Kalkis will clear for the top position as there's contact actually between those two. That'll split them up, and they don't. And Kunkel doesn't decide to block. He decides to stick with the 78, and that's going to allow Droppin the Hammah to get back on the outside.
That's the most organization we've seen from the guys on the inside in a little while, even since the beginning of stage 2. It's taken a while for these guys to find their mojo, but here they are with a chance to fight back for the top spot. A great run off turn 4 by Kunkel will get him the lead, barely at the stripe. The 2 Harlows working together up top, and the DTH camp has been so successful over the course of this race, but still no answer as they come back to turn 1. The Toyotas lead them through.
They get cleared once again, and you can see them move up this time, definitely making sure that they cover those positions as well. Hendry on the bottom, unable to allow them to really make a move to the inside, and they'll stay up front. And how about Stephen Maggio has recovered to get himself up towards the top 10 now in this stage, and side by side with Chris Fogo right now as we're on board with Stephen Harlow, who has not gotten a race win this season. His brother has just in front of him. And how about Stephen Harlow if he's able to take the Project Tupner Chevrolet to victory lane in the final race of the regular season?
Stephen Harlow, the Fairhaven, Vermont native for that Droppin the Hammah team, of course, with his teammates right now, other than the 2 Toyotas that are leading this race, back to turn 1. Spent his time off the track as a strength and conditioning coach, and there's a look on board with his car and his setup there on the bottom right end of the screen as he leans into turns 1 and 2. Had a good look at what's happening on that inside lane. Justin Hendry with newfound life, and Richard Swavely, who captured stage points. Very good run right now for the Rick man. He makes the move down low. He desperately needs a race like this and maybe a race win to further assure himself as one of the 16 playoff contenders. He makes the move down low. Top 2 have cleared the top side. And I think, Francisco, from the look on board with Stephen Harlow, there was a big-time checkup there. Warren Kyle Keith had to back out. There were some sparks flying from the rear end of James Kunkel's Toyota, so something backed them up on the outside. They have to hit the reset button and try again.
And look at Stephen Maggio, who's gotten himself back up into the top 5 behind Richard Swavely. He lost the draft towards the end of stage 2, is all the way back there, the only car not in any kind of drafting group, and has recovered nicely to get himself up in front. And Moreno, on the other hand, is kind of toying with the outside of the top 20 back in the 18th position. I'm not sure if he's doing this by design or what's going on with the 87 right now, but he has not made any inroads since the stage. He's actually lost position since the restart.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, all side by side, and then basically everyone else. And now a spinner. Warren Kyle Keith is turned around at the front of the field, and they catch everyone else. Steven Stepien, Chris Progar among those hard into the outside wall. And our biggest crash of the night fires up at lap 77.
I think that's one of the first times I've ever seen in a mid-portion of the race a wreck happened on the exit of the trial. Well, you'd think that such a hot spot like that, you'd see more incidents like that occur. I think that's the first time I've ever seen an incident like that happen in such a realistic manner. I think that was an ill push that the 78 received that got him sideways in front of the field, and you could see exactly why those wrecks tend to cause a lot of cars to get involved. We'll get the aerial shot here of what exactly brought this incident out. You see Warren Cal Keith, James Kunkel, nose to tail. Looks like Harlow tried to go through the middle, and it just side drafts him enough, and then it gets him around, and so many cars just there. They're nearly 5 wide at certain instances, and so many guys getting significant damage. Others maybe not so much, but that's still going to be a big one as far as who's going to be left in this race in contentious.
And it all started there with Harlow just trying to make the move to the inside and push those 2 Toyotas 3 wide. Here's Steven Stepien. Nowhere to go. Packed in with his teammate Harlow on the outside, and with affiliate driver and co-owner of the league, Chris Progar, on the top. And that is a big shunt for the hopeful right here, the Wisconsin native who was trying to point his way into the playoffs, now with heavy front-end nose damage.
And Moreno had a fortunate circumstance of avoiding this wreck at the same time because he was at the tail end of that lead group that we're talking about. Watch this perspective. It basically came to a stop to avoid everybody, and he was able to get through.
That's just like Parker Bland, though, in one of the last cautions of the race with Timothy Stubblefield and company. Just basically hopped on the brake pedal and stopped it all the way through just to make it by. And thankfully, Moreno makes it through. A lot of other drivers do not, though. And that should prompt the field to come down pit road. Remember that alternate call from everybody 11th on back that was led by Moreno through the last caution. Well, now it brings everyone in, trying to make that final pit stop of the race and deal with fuel as early as possible. Kunkel will try and come in. Everyone else will follow. And then, of course, the opportunity for all of those guys involved to get some damage repair. And the list is long. Kip Easley, Steven Stepien, Craig Parks, Chris Progar, Stephen Harlow, and the list goes on. Look at the very quick pit stops, 5 seconds or less for all of those guys. Maggio, the leader, off pit road.
It basically has some kind of suspension damage because he slid through about 3 or 4 boxes before actually getting to his stall, having to back up extensively. So he's probably got some big damage on his number 8 machine. As you see him out there on his fifth, you see the right front kind of messed up, but I think the left rear or right rear was not spinning at all while he was backing up. Stephen Harlow, plenty of guys taking significant damage repair, as only really the top 9 cars have even left pit road right now, as Brad Fulham and a couple others now start to make their way off the pit lane exit in the process. But I will say this, Kenneth, that's a big enough wreck, maybe not enough to necessarily DNF a couple drivers, but certainly enough that'll give them significant damage to have to deal with the rest of this race.
And in a drafting track like Daytona, any bit of damage aerodynamically is going to hurt you and will cost you possibly a couple miles an hour down the straightaways. There's Warren Kyle Keith, who was at the heart of the incident. They were being turned as they were coming to turn 1. And it was maybe a faint block, but for the most part, it was just side drafting occurring between him and Ross as they were coming down into the corner. And it was nearly going to be 3 wide as they went down to turn 1. But, of course, that contact gets everyone involved. And once you back up a lane like that, there's nowhere to go for everyone else. It's sort of like a bike race when everyone is in that peloton, just in a huge pack. If the leader ends up crashing, there is, more often than not, nowhere for the other riders to go. And that's why you see a ton of big crashes happen in bike racing. A lot of people hurt when the leader ends up with a problem or they hit something and all of a sudden it ignites the big one in bike racing. But we will try to get this restart ready for you as Alex Muscarella waits for the wave around here. Only a couple of cars that fell down a lap or more from the leaders. Muscarella is 60 laps down, so a lot of problems there for the Matza man. Jason Hastings, despite being in the top 5 earlier in this race, is now 2 laps down, and his car is behind the wall. And then, of course, a bunch of those guys who have come in for damage from the big crash. Kip Easley with the suspension damage. He officially is out of this race for right now, so at the moment cannot redeem himself from the Daytona race all those months ago. Stephen Harlow and Steven Stepien, 2 of the strongest cars of the field, they're still on pit lane, but with a ton of damage, and it appears their races will be over. Man, I don't know if we were expecting that, Francisco. I mean, so much strength from the DTH group of 3 and maybe even 4 drivers, and it's just that one situation of back up there nearly 3 wide, and it gets a ton of the heavy hitters out.
Eventually what's going to happen, of course, it's very difficult for you to show up to Daytona or Talladega and not have that big one occur at any point in the race. And it happened relatively early. Normally we see it in the final couple laps of the race when the intensity is at its highest, but what this does is put everybody in that fuel mileage window that we were talking about, and it's very optimistic. You definitely cannot go green flag the whole way without saving some sort of fuel from now to the checkered. I think most of these guys are pitted here banking on caution flags, so they don't have to pit the rest of the way. But even if we get overtime and they don't bring it down pit road, somebody's going to run out. It is that close.
Yeah, it's 45 laps from here to the end. And as we get a look at our SK Sim Racing race analysis once more, it was a 65 lap long stage. It was cut down to 60 with the intermission time we had between the yellow flag thrown at the end of stage 2 and then when we actually got the green flag restart after guys came down pit road. Now it's down to 45. We knew there was going to at least be 1 stop to go until the end of the race, but how close can they cut it to make it to the checkered flag, barring any overtime restarts like Francisco mentioned. Green flag back in the air. Maggio this time in control, and not much help down the inside lane. Hendry and Maggio will split from Timothy Stubblefield and the rest of the guys on the bottom. They'll get a new patron. That is Lawson Peel down the inside, and they'll take the lead in turn 1.
Maggio with the nose out in front, and Hendry the nose out in front of the 42 as well. So Maggio is in a good spot, but now Kunkel with it despite no help as Lawson Peel now moves behind the 42. He's going to shove the 42 out in front, and there goes Lawson Peel with a great push to get the 42 on himself out in front, and they're going to clear for the top 2 positions. Ross Harlow in the back as well, trying to see if he can get back up to 3rd. And just by the, if anybody's watching the NASCAR All-Star race right now, Kenneth, I think they would realize that the promoter's caution has officially come out.
Well, I don't know what's happening in that North Wilkesboro All-Star race right now, to be honest with you. I watched a bit of the Open, but I have no idea who's leading, what's going down at the All-Star race this evening. But there comes Lawson Peel. He wants more. The Columbus, Mississippi native charges to the inside and through the point of the nose. Lawson Peel, new race leader from Daytona off of turn 2.
For the first time all night, we see the number 9 out in front of the field. And how long will it last for the Mississippi native? He's got Steven Maggio, one of his rivals in the 4-wide racing championship, right behind him. Those 2 are going to battle at Charlotte later this week for the chance to end up at Homestead Miami Speedway. But for now, they're racing each other for a win here at Daytona. Justin Hendry, who was in contention of winning that race earlier in the year back in January, sits in 3rd, and they're cleared as Brad Fulham. Even though he's a lap down, Kenneth, he's not a lap down. He's actually up there in the 5th spot behind Timothy Stubblefield.
What a great run it is for the 48-year-old from Winnipeg, Canada. He has moved his way through the top 5, and Fulham is starting to make his name known in the single car for that RTR Motorsports group that was one of the big-time teams in the Sunoco Cup Series through its later stages of life, but they have diminished. Not as many of those drivers joined the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series for 2025, so Fulham basically running solo dolo, but he's done a great job so far this evening, has kept himself surviving through the big cautions, and he's going to run single file with basically everyone else. First battle for side-by-side is actually back in 13th place, but it will diminish very quickly. Moreno is letting Ross Harlow rock in line. Robert A. Moyer Jr., in a good sign, has recovered, and he has repaired the rest of his Toyota Camry that was ailing from the secondary caution he was involved in down the back straightaway with Timothy Stubblefield. And so everyone running single file nose to tail, and this goes all the way back to Chris Progar running 17th. The attrition has kicked in, Francisco, and exactly what you said. It's going to be for fuel saving here. One more stop with 41 laps to go.
you can also tell by the speeds that they're running that the pace is kind of dropped as far as the actual speeds they're running. Moreno on the racetrack that we were just with around the racetrack is not even reaching 190 miles an hour. Normally these guys can get upwards of 195 and close to 200, and they're not even scraping the edge of what you can do so with just minimal draft. So definitely some significant fuel savings going on here, and it's not as noticeable on a super speedway as it is at any other racetrack. Let's try and see if we can go on board with Moreno so you can try and see for yourself and listen for yourself what it sounds like to be fuel saving at a super speedway. And like I said, it's not clutching and coasting or anything like that. All it takes is hearing the throttle less and less, and you're just going through the corner, you're not using the brake, and you use probably 50% throttle the entire way through. By doing that, you don't burn as much fuel, and that's how you fuel save. So you see that incident right there? He didn't hit the brakes, he just rolled up to it and didn't use up any more fuel by braking and then having to accelerate to keep up with the pack in front of him. That's how you save fuel at a super speedway.
And what you don't see is the full-on telemetry between the inputs on the throttle and the brake, but if you do get a look at the telemetry across the board, you'll see two very different styles of saving fuel and hanging back in the draft. A lot of drivers are up full throttle, but then they just lay off the gas pedal and they don't touch anything else to scrub off the speed. But you'll often see other drivers stay full throttle and they'll maintain 100% throttle, but when they have to slow down, they just get a dab of the brake while staying full throttle. So it effectively does the same thing at scrubbing off speed and slowing the car down, but just two different ways of doing that. Either you drag the brakes and you kind of let it slow down the race car, or you effectively lay off the gas pedal, and that's what you hear, kind of that break in the action of the V8 screaming down this 2.5-mile super speedway. It's just the matter of what you can do to save as much fuel as possible. And given the fact that they are basically right on the edge of the window, it's going to be very, very close. I think they really need a caution flag to come out if they want to be confirmed good until the end of this race. And I think I'm hearing more shenanigans from the NASCAR All-Star race as Lawson Peel and Steven Maggio pull slightly away from the field. Michael Waltrip dropped the caution flag on the track. So it's,
yeah, he did. I saw that.
They didn't just throw the yellow. He literally threw the yellow. He put it on
They
the
literally threw it. They literally threw it on the racetrack. They said, all right, here's the caution flag. Here it is, literally. And just go out there on the racetrack and throw it out there. That makes me, the stuff like this makes me wonder, what if we had this option in these league races? What if we were given the opportunity of throwing a random caution like this in the middle of the race?
I really don't think I want to know what the reality of that would be like if there were somehow debris cautions on iRacing. You know, there is debris that happens when race cars crash, you know, bumpers fly off and all of that. But, you know, after a little while, because, you know, this is a simulation after all, the bumper will disappear and there will be no debris yellows. But if we could get that kind of proverbial water bottle on the racetrack that gets thrown out in the speedway and there's a yellow that comes out as a result, I don't even think I want to think about how complicated that would make things, and I think how aggravated that would make people on the racetrack.
And watch this. Justin Hendry is still trying to save fuel, and clearly Lawson Peel and Steven Maggio are not, and they have actually driven away from everybody at the front of the field. They have 1.2 seconds back to Justin Hendry.
And we look at the lap times between the front runners, 47.3s for Peel and Maggio. You want to know how fast Hendry and company were going? They were going 48.2s across the speedway, nearly a full
and now they're closing back
slower.
In.
And I think they're realizing now that they're just going to need to catch up in the draft, or else things may be very dire in their consequences. Maggio and Peel out ahead by a ton of time, and they'll be out to lead lap 90 for 35 laps to go.
I think they saw that and they realized we still have to save some fuel, but we can't let them get away. Otherwise, we won't be in the battle for the win. And I'm wondering just how close are Maggio and Peel on fuel, or how do they feel about their fuel-saving numbers? We know everybody's going to be borderline on being able to make it, even with at their most recent caution. And if we have any overtime, everyone, I'm assuming, has to pit because of just how close it is. We've seen with 100% fuel that at Talladega you can go about 37 to 40 laps maximum. This track a little bit shorter. You could probably go maximum 44 laps with a really good effort of saving fuel, and the leader burns the most fuel at the same time. So we talk about all this fuel as in regards to most of the field, but Lawson Peel leading this race is going to have slightly less than everybody else.
As a look at our Charlie Bauer Photography onboard camera with the two-time winner this season, Stephen Maggio, the only driver not named Lawson Peel to win more than one race this year. And just as you hear it from the rear end of his Chevrolet, no signs of slowing down, no signs of fuel saving. He is full throttle all the way across this 2.5-mile super speedway. And just now is when Justin Hendry, Timothy Stubblefield, and the rest of this pack that goes all the way down to Parker Bland in 12th place. They have disconnected, by the way, from Ethan Fonseca Moreno, who leads a group of maybe about 4 to 5 cars from 13th on back. They are just aiming to catch up. And does that mean any more burned fuel? And what does that tell for Lawson Peel at the end of this race? Is he not caring so much about the possibility of losing fuel pressure, or is he confident enough that there will be either a make it to the end strategy or a caution that will create a break in the action and allow everyone to come down pit road? It's going to be a game of chess here at 195 miles an hour. And there's a look at Ethan Fonseca Moreno, who is just now catching to the back bumper of Parker Bland. So they haven't fully disconnected from the group. They're back in tow.
They're right there, and I think it was partially due to when they separated initially with the first pack losing a little bit of time and then deciding what to go. I think it kind of just ended up in a split situation there, and you can see now that Moreno's caught up, they've checked up significantly, giving them an opportunity to save a little bit more fuel now again. And looks like for the second time, Maggio and Peel kind of break away a little bit from Hendry. They're getting about half a second out there right now compared to Justin Hendry out in the third place car. And I'm not sure what exactly it is that they're intending to do by doing this, Kenneth.
Not entirely sure. I'm not a strategist by any means necessary, so I couldn't really tell you the exact situation. But for right now, everyone all single file, trailing behind the duo leading by what is now more than half a second. Lawson Peel and Stephen Maggio, then the three-car breakaway of Justin Hendry, Timothy Stubblefield, and Brad Fulham, before you find Warren Kyle Keith. Brandon Banks, who steps into the top 10 with new colors on his PaulsCars.com Chevrolet in honor of Kyle Larson when he ran the double last year, or at least tried to run the double last year with the blue, white, and orange colors on both his IR18 and his NASCAR Chevrolet. But for right now, everyone just waiting in the wings to see what happens through the green flag strategy. Well, we're going green here at Daytona. Why don't we turn up the volume and crank it up here on the KBueno Racing Network. Back live from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Great moment to hear the sounds and the atmosphere of this Daytona International Speedway. Such a prestigious venue as Lawson Peel continues to lead this race past lap 99 and through our final 25. Here from Daytona Beach, Florida, and welcome back to the coverage on the KBueno Racing Network. Kenneth Bueno and Francisco Bacallao with you. Everyone has run in this lane comfortably. A bit of moves there from Warren Kyle Keith, but for the most part, everyone content with running single file. And I think with what we've seen so far, not as much fuel saving from the top 15 or so that I anticipated from the early portions of this run. I don't know if anyone's confirmed to make it or whether they all understand that they're a couple laps short and they're just going to run it till the tank runs dry. But final sector of this race, you got to make that decision very quickly in order to cycle out back to the front.
I think if you know you're going to be short, pitting under green actually is the better strategy because you don't lose a lap. You're taking a minimum stop time, and if a caution were to come out after you pit, you just stay out and take over the track position. So if they are indeed short, when do you make the pit stop? I think they're just trying to bank on a possible caution, but like I said, if the caution comes out after you pitted, that's actually a good thing. You take over the track position. You see most of this top 10 is also really strung out in the process, so they're definitely saving some bit of fuel by staying that strung out and not as nose to tail as we've seen them all night long to this point. So we're just going to have to see how the numbers truly shake out when it comes to how much they've been able to save in the process. But we still have 25 laps to determine that to be the case, and what has just occurred is that Christopher Bell just took over the race win in the All-Star race, and it came at the hands of that promoter's caution.
Oh, that was a lot of fun, and you know, it ignited a conversation in the YouTube chat between Jessica Stubblefield, Sarah J, and Feathered Dream Studio. All of them have been kind of talking about what roles they would like to have. You know, Jessica said, I want to be a flag waver. They make great money, but they have a hold of a great responsibility in waving the flags in the perfect form and getting the field under green, getting them under yellow, throwing the red if necessary, throwing any black flags if anyone files any penalties throughout the race. But somebody also says that Sarah saying, I always say I want to be the pace car driver. And Jessica says, want to feel important, but less life-threatening. So just a cool conversation of what roles you would like to have. And, you know, I don't think the track staff gets as much credit as, you know, maybe the race car drivers do in the teams for all of the hard work they pour in each and every Sunday and full weekend for NASCAR on-track action. If you had an on-track staff position, what would you take? Would you take pace car? Would you take flag waver? Would you take anything else?
I would take the pace car, I think, but I wouldn't take the NASCAR pace car job. I think I would take the safety car position from F1. They get to drive it a little bit harder. You see the trouble here for the 18 of Robert A. Moore Jr. I think he might have been exiting the pit lane, but he has clearly gone another lap down in this race, so the troubles continue for the 18 in a must-win situation. I'll take the F1 safety car driver role. Burt Mylander, lay over, buddy. It's my turn to go out there and drive behind the pace car. I did have an opportunity of going around in a BMW at the Homestead road course a week ago at an event we were doing at the racetrack, and I was able to go for a ride along, and let me tell you, it was a great experience. I hope we can share that video someday on one of these streams.
That's probably the equivalent of, you know, cosplaying an F1 safety car driver, because if you've seen onboards of the safety car drivers, which they get to drive Aston Martins, by the way, they haul across the speedway, across a racetrack. It's not like they're just running at, you know, 65 miles an hour. They're running at natural pace like, you know, a lot of the NASCAR pace cars do, from Chevy Camaros to Corvettes to Toyota TRD Camrys to whatever it may be, Chevy Blazers in there too, Mustang Mach-E's, whatever's at the front of the field. They don't hustle and bustle like the F1 safety cars do, so I'd say that's a pretty good choice. You know, pace car driver seems like a lot of fun. You hold a great responsibility of holding a tidy wheel right in front of a pack of very hungry, very loud, and very aggressive race cars, whether it be stock racing machines or open wheel cars. I think if I had any sort of job at a track staff, I think I'd want to be a corner marshal. I think it'd be so cool to be out there watching the cars go across, and you play a big role in the safety aspect of it too, helping out the drivers when they get into an accident and being the first on the scene. But give major props to how quickly those responders are when there's a big crash. So I think being a corner marshal and kind of making sure the corners are all good, whether it be at a road course or an oval, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Well, you also get to wave a flag at the same time if you have to wave a local yellow or something. But fortunately for us, we both have a friend of ours that took up on flag waving. Joseph Costello, that's a great mention here on the broadcast here tonight. He historically has done some flag waving, even for, I think, KBueno back when they would do some of the dirt coverages.
That's true. If those watching right now on the KBueno Racing Network recognize the QuickTime Dirt Racing Series, you would understand the level of importance that Joseph Costello had as a flag waver. I don't think he did flag waving for us at the KBueno Racing Network. I think most of the work was done in the QuickTime YouTube channel, which was broadcasted, by the way, by our very good friend and own KBueno member, Keelan Belsha, alongside a good friend of ours, Shane D. Mantova. But still, shout out Joseph Costello. He's been in the booth with us a couple of times. He's raced in several of the old series that we ran here at the KBueno Racing Network back in 2020, 2021, and a bit beyond that. As the leaders get by a pair of Drinkin' Bros Racing Chevrolets. That is Jason Hastings, who had fallen out of this race for a bit. He is currently 9 laps down. And Craig Parks, Talladega Super Speedway winner, lodged as right now the first car a lap down or more, sitting in 18th place. So it is a tough nail in the coffin, possibly for Robert A. Moyer Jr., who, like you said, did come down pit road. He fell a lap down to the leaders. Number one, he's all by himself, but secondarily, no one else has come down pit road. So the man in the must-win situation ends up on the poor end of the stick as Peel and Maggio continue to lead them through to 18 laps to go. No signs of pit road yet.
And plenty of cars are a lap down in front of the 18 as well, and he's behind all of them, so it doesn't look like it's going to work out well for the 18. It's going to take a miracle for him to get back on the lead lap and then charge his way through to win this race to get into the playoffs. So for right now, Chris Progar, it's going to take a miracle in a different way. He's running in 16th, and he's on the lead lap, as there you see the onboard with Steven Stempian. Looks like he might have a little bit of damage. That wheel looks a bit off to the right down the straightaway, so he probably still has some kind of damage. And you can tell by the pace that him and that group have been running as Justin Erb makes his way onto the pit lane, and it's just by himself.
And here comes Alex Muscarella, DTH Chevrolet, coming down, and that fully reveals the extent of the damage for Steven Stepien, depending on how you look at it from the angle. Him and Stephen Harlow both have a ton of damage for their Chevrolets, obviously from that big crash, and they spent as much time as possible without losing so many laps, but still, they could not get the cars back to 100%, and that usually happens when you have required damage on iRacing. Very two different styles of repairs on the sim. You have optional and required. Obviously required meaning you can't go back out on track unless you spend that time repairing the car. Optional means you can kind of get away with staying on the track with that damage, but it still will linger on whenever you come down pit road, and it will be repaired whenever you come in for service, whether it be for tires or fuel or anything else. And if you have required repairs, more often than not, the damage is, the dents, the scuffs, everything in between will still show on the race car because the car is terminally altered, versus optionals, which are, minor scratches, minor scuffs, minor dents here and there, to which you can come down pit road, get all of that repaired, and the car will look just like it did when it rolled off the hauler to get the green flag. So for those guys in the back, a lap down or more, searching for that lucky dog, currently in hold of Craig Parks, running 18th.
And as we continue to wind these laps down, we're going to be approaching 16 to go here at the line. Boston Peel has burned the most fuel, absolutely and for sure. How many more laps is he able to stay out here without having to bring it down pit road? These drivers are on their 31st lap, and I think it's important to mention Richard Swavely and Parker Bland are two of those in the lead draft that came into pit road and topped off on their last caution. So they have one more lap of fuel compared to everybody else in this lead draft. How much that can play a role, we'll just have to see.
As we see it, though, the onboard look from Lawson Peel, no real concern for the Columbus, Mississippi native, who came away with P2, the runner-up spot here at Daytona, as the leaders crashed off turn 4, and as Stubblefield got the victory, Peel was that man right in the background, ready for the pounds should there have been a couple more 100 feet left, but he settled for P2 and then backed it up with a huge win at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And for the first 4 races of the year, only one finish outside of the top 10. That was 11th. That was the race after at Phoenix, to which his teammate won in Eric Schaefer. But after his 20th place finish at our last Super Speedway at Talladega, 4 straight top 5s, including 1 win at Michigan. Stays put up front. Maggio right behind, and here comes the first taker outside of the lane. Warren Kyle Keith wants to look to the bottom. He'll flail underneath Justin Hendry's machine. And how about a bit of Timothy Stubblefield as well on the outside. Our first bit of fireworks happening, third on back, and they've lost a lot of time to the leaders. No gain off turn 4.
And I'm wondering if they're getting racy because they realize the fuel situation that they're in and they're good to go to the end, or if they're considering just pitting here soon enough and they're just trying to get track position. It could be either or. But you see a couple other cars in the group are cars that are a lap down or have already made a pit stop, because one of them, I believe, is the 32 of Richard Swiftly. No, he's actually up in the 5th place position. They're actually getting up here and challenging for the move. There's Warren Kyle Keith, who dips below the double yellow line to get by Lawson Peel.
That was an NBA level crossover down the super stretch. Got to the outside of Maggio, looked to the inside of Peel, and missiled his way to the lead. And a big shunt by Steven Maggio may have just given the Brand machine a bit of front end nose damage, and it won't keep Warren Kyle Keith at the top spot for right now. Lawson Peel retains control of the race lead off of turn number 4, and back to turn 1 with Brandon Banks in tow. They'll swap to the inside. Hendry will be the leader up top of a 3-car charge back to turn 2.
And you see the top 3 have cleared now on the inside lane. And Warren Kyle Keith, the catalyst in trying to make something happen here. Alex Muscarella, the lapper in all of this, is just there having a good time. As Maggio now goes to the outside, he doesn't get any help from Muscarella. He's going to have to wait for Hendry to get up there to his rear bumper. As we're approaching 12 laps to go in this race, and for mostly everybody, their 35th lap in the stint. You can see how this is going hand in hand as Warren Kyle Keith, James Kunkel, Richard Swavely, and Parker Bland all bringing it to the pit lane. And remember, Parker Bland and Richard Swavely topped off on the most recent caution. So if they're bringing it down pit road, you can expect to see most of the leaders in soon.
All of them Toyota Camrys, 4 cars in total, hitting with 12 laps to go. How big of a call is this in the late stages of this race? I'm not sure if anyone out there thought there would be a yellow flag thrown sooner than later. But the answer clearly is no yellow flag. The Toyotas are out. They'll be underway. And now we wait for the race leaders to come in or not.
And you can see on the right side of the screen, they're already exiting the pit lane. And they didn't exit that far apart from one another. James Kunkel, Richard Swavely, they're pretty decently close. As you see another group of cars make their way onto pit road. I believe this involved a couple more of as the 42 of Kunkel sideways in the grass had a little bit of trouble with the tires getting up to speed. You see a next group of cars pitting on the left side of your screen. Looks like Justin Hendry, Sean Taylor, Brad Fulham, Chris Progar, and the 16 of Ross Harlow all make their way into the pit lane there. Harlow, of course, and among others, are a lap down in this race as they run. Actually, Harlow's on the lead lap. But a couple of the people he's working with there could be outside of the lead lap. You see now that really ruined the run, and actually Richard Swavely had a pit road penalty because he's on his way back to pit road.
Oh, such a tough situation for Swavely. Remember, 14 points separated him and then the cut line to be bounced out. Swavely, of course, needs a decent run just to be in. Here come the top 4 leaders through. They had the lap cars of Muscarella and Justin Erb get around them, but it's Peel, Banks, Moreno, and Maggio. 2 DBR, 2 BBR in on pit road with 10 laps to go at the stripe.
Schaefer's in a little bit further back as well, so it'll make it 3 Drinking Bros Racing cars as there's Stubblefield now to make it 3 of each. As Kevin Roy, the single car, is going to remain out there on the racetrack, has yet to pit in this race. And he's running with a couple lap cars of Steven Stempian and I believe the 11 of Stephen Harlow. So he's continuing to circle all around the racetrack, and he's currently leading lap.
Well, he's the only car left to pit. Of course, that lap car behind him just giving assistance as long as possible. But Roy has clocked in 37 green flag laps on his stint of fuel. So obviously he will have to come down pit road as long as, you know, he is on the same pace as everyone else, which means he will be a couple laps short and he cannot get to the checkered flag. We saw most of these guys go 35 to 37 laps, I believe, on fuel right before a majority of them decided to come in. Here's a crucial pass for position. They're still trying to get around Lawson Peel, Brandon Banks, Moreno, and Maggio, who have come out ahead. And by they, I mean Warren Kyle Keith, Parker Bland, James Kunkel, Chris Progar, and a majority of the front section of the field that are very much deep and with a lot of drivers with them. And here is the leading group. Should Kevin Roy come down pit road soon, but the laps are waning down. Kevin Roy could put himself as a first-time race winner inside 9 laps to go if he can hold on.
He's leading that group, so he's not saving the most amount of fuel, but he also can't exactly get behind them because those 2 guys are damaged significantly. So it would actually hamper him either way. So for Kevin Roy, I'm assuming he's just banking on the caution flag to come out or something to just help him out here. He's approaching his 40th lap of the stint the next time around to the line, and he has 20 or so seconds to the leader. So if he does intend on trying to get to the checkered flag in this race, he has plenty of a gap to work with. He just has to make sure he takes advantage of it.
19.6 seconds and crunching down is the gap between Kevin Roy, the leader, and
he just announced he's pitting,
who will be the net race leader. So good news there for Lawson Peel and company. Kevin Roy will come down this time by with 8 laps to go, and that leaves Lawson back in the catbird seat with his teammate to help, and then 2 BBR drivers, one of them looking for his first win right behind, and the other one looking for a trifecta. Eric Schaefer currently running 6. He's still looking for another win since Phoenix Raceway. And then 7th on back is where everyone is hauling the mail. They aren't faster by that much, Francisco, and I think that bit of a hiccup there in the middle of turns 3 and 4 may have just slowed them down between Kunkel and Bland, but these are hard-charging guys with more cars in line. They could catch up to the main group and make this a proper fight in the final few laps.
They can try to do so. They're 3.3 seconds back, but you look at the drivers that are in that lead group, and those are drivers that are capable, even with less numbers, of making more time on the rest of the field if they get lined up and organized quickly. We saw Moreno and Maggio were those involved in that epic strategy call at Talladega about a month ago in 4 wide, and they're in a catburn seat to try and make this work. Moreno was able to take the win in that instance, and we'll see if Maggio is able to help him out against the Drinking Bros Racing cars. The kind of alpha in this situation, the variable, will be Eric Schaefer because he's teammates to those in the top 2. So if Moreno and Maggio decide to make a move to the outside, you can already bet Schaefer is going to stick with his 2 teammates that are leading.
And looking at the gap right now, 46.8 for Warren Kyle Keith. We'll see how it clocks in. That is official. 46.8 for the 6th place car. 47 flat for the race leader in Lawson Peel. So it's a 0.2 of a second difference. Should there be that 0.2 of a second gap that continues to close down, they may just be right in touch with these leaders coming down to the checkered flag. It is going to be very close. It is going to be by fine margins, but it is enough to give them a chance. And for right now, I think that's anything that Warren Kyle Keith would hope for. The St. Augustine, Florida native has qualified very much well throughout the course of this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season, but his best finish of the year is runner-up, and that came at the Monster Mile back in early April. He has yet to find a way to win a race yet. He started this race nicely. He finished 13th last week at the Worldwide Technology Raceway in Illinois, one that he would like to possibly forget for the incidents that he was involved in, and very hungry for his first win of 2025 while the 4-time winner holds on, coming to 4 laps to go.
And they nearly threw it away there on the trial oval because they went side by side momentarily, and that allowed the second group to really make good strides. On that last lap, they were half a second quicker, and it looks like they could do the same on this lap. So it could be a matter of them getting caught up by the time it's 2 laps to go here.
And you got a question, if you see that run come up, Francisco, if you're Moreno or Maggio, are you going up and are you risking slowing them down and creating a crash inside the final 3 laps to go in this race to get that extra edge, or are you loyal to the other Drinking Bros Chevrolets that are right in front of you?
I think their best bet is to go with Warren Kyle Keith and the rest of them because Schaefer is a teammate to those in front of him. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on how big of a run Warren Kyle Keith has at the time in which they catch up, but also does Schaefer go up there to make a move on his own right? So those are things that they're going to be looking at. But on this particular lap, the gap is kind of stagnated. It's kind of maintaining. It's very similar. They're about 1.7 seconds behind Eric Schaefer. They'll catch the draft soon, but Warren Kyle Keith gets tagged sideways. You see him get sideways there. Looks like Kunkel might have gotten into the back of him. They get recovered, but that's going to cost them time.
Organization, organization, organization. That is huge. And now Chris Progar slings up high. He wants a move to try and weave through the top 6, and that surely could kill any gained momentum that the second pack has. And moving up to the front in the final 3 laps, Progar gets shuffled back. He'll bring Ross Harlow with him, and they'll single file out again. But how much will that cost them in the final 5 miles?
That's going to ultimately do it, because now they're 2.2 seconds back, 2.1. They lost all the time that they could have gained, and by getting into the draft of Eric Schaefer, and now that's going to make this a 5-car battle for this win as they approach 2 laps to go at the line. If a caution flag doesn't come out, somebody from this group could win this race.
Think of the drivers leading this race right now. Peel has won 4 races. Banks won a race at Chicagoland in a standoff to the finish. Moreno has not won a race yet, but he's captured several poles. Maggio has won a pair of races already, and then Eric Schaefer back in P5. He's won one. That came in Phoenix earlier this season. Warren Kyle Keith, the leader of the second group, hasn't won a race. Neither has James Kunkel. Neither has Parker Bland. Neither has Justin Hendry. Neither has Fulham, Progar, Kalis, Kevin Roy, and the list continues. Many different hopefuls looking for their first career victory, but they have to try and catch up and make up the ground lost.
They're within a second.
That minuscule mishap that happened inside 3 laps to go. Lawson Peel catches the white flag from Daytona.
And Warren Kyle Keith is within 1 second of Eric Schaefer, and they're continuing to make in some increasingly big time on the 3-car. Almost half a second now as they go to turn 1. They have a huge run. They're going to have a chance down this back straightaway of making a move.
And here they come. They just appear in frame. That
and the 42 gets
There's
turned.
a spinner. James Kunkel gets turned around. Will that hurt Warren Kyle Keith? The 42 car is spinning. He's stranded on the exit of turn 2.
And Drinker Bros Racing is split up.
And it is a hodgepodge of race cars down the super stretch. Big block by Peel. Moreno back in second. And Warren Kyle Keith shooting out of a cannon.
That's going to help Peel.
Trying to make it happen out of turn 4 in the chase to the finish line. Peel trying to block. Keith down low. The drag race to the stripe. Banks with help. He'll spin around. Peel fight to the line.
And Warren Kyle Keith.
And Warren Kyle Keith, for the first time, is a DTH Cup Series winner. No! Lawson Peel wins it by spinning through the stripe. Oh my goodness.
1/1000th of a second. By 1/1000th of a second, Lawson Peel, who we thought was out of it with that spin, he wins the race.
And it is the closest finish in Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series history, and the emotions dragging on.
Have
for
you
Warren
ever?
Kyle Keith. I have never. An unbelievable sequence to the end. And Lawson Peel, after it all, gets his 5th career victory in stunning fashion. And we mentioned Warren Kyle Keith's name first because he was topped at the timing screen when the checkered flag came out, but then it immediately reversed, and as timing officially registered, it's 1/1000th of a second that separate Lawson Peel and the rest of the pack. 3 wide to the stripe. Peel was sliding through the grass, and it's a very familiar emotion for Lawson Peel, this time with a little added stress. Career win number 5. And for the first time on a super speedway, Lawson Peel will visit Droppin' the Hammah victory lane.
And that was top-tier defense by Lawson Peel the entire final lap. Everybody was making a move on him. And Banks with Schaefer had a huge run coming to the line. Banks actually had gone below the yellow line to try and advance his position on Lawson Peel entering the trial. Well, that's what sent Peel spinning. And just in a sheer tiny gap, it's all it took for the 9 to get spun, but also just get back to the line as the race leader.
So here's how it all unfolded on this final lap. Peel takes it without a trace at all single file. There's the crash in the background. James Kunkel getting turned around off the nose of, I believe it was Parker Bland. And then here comes the blocking down the super stretch. Peel has the advantage. Moreno and Maggio working together as teammates. They try to make a move up high. Moreno backs up, and look at that chart down low by Warren Kyle Keith that will get him to second. Maggio files down low to help, but then tries to assist his teammate. But look at this run from the 5 and the 3 car. Brandon Banks and Eric Schaefer make the last-ditch effort at the line. He peeks to the bottom, catches the quarter panel of Peel, And we need a closer look at that. 1/1000th of a second that separate the two leaders at the stripe. So let's see if we
Never
can get
seen
another
anything
look.
like
So this is
this.
off turn 4. Pio has the lead. He has the lead. He has the lead. Banks is there. And this one is going to get close.
I mean, it almost looks made up when you look at these replays. Watch this as the line is coming up here on.
Oh my.
Can you even call that?
I don't even know. It doesn't even look like Pio's ahead by that much.
It doesn't even look like he is ahead.
And from all of these other camera
Unreal.
angles, it really doesn't show the level of closeness between these three cars. And mark that nearly 4 wide as well. That's the pink 87 of Ethan Fonseca Moreno at the very top end of the speedway, trying to make that last-ditch effort. And for the moment when we thought the win was in hand of Warren Kyle Keith, it gets stolen away in a heartbeat.
And your top 3 will end up within 11,000th of a second when you include Eric Schaefer in that 3-wide finish. I think without a doubt, Kenneth, this race right here was the closest finish in not just Droppin the Hammah series, but in KBRN broadcasting history.
That's right. 1/1000th of a second separates the winner from the loser. Lawson Peel with his 5th career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series victory, and it comes in stunning fashion. And once more, Warren Kyle Keith will deer the bear of the heartbreaking moment, runner-up for the 2nd time this year. Eric Schaefer backs up with a 3rd place finish. Ethan Fonseca Moreno had nearly made it 4 wide at the stripe. He locks in 4th with Maggio back in 5th. Brandon Banks, who made that big-time move on the inside appeal that spun him around to the grass, ends up with P6. And then behind them, Parker Bland 7th, Justin Hendry in 8th, Brad Fulham 9th, and Chris Progar the top 10.
11th place goes to the Ross Harlow machine, who ends up recovering up to 11th place. Sean Kalis, who needed a win to make the playoffs, will finish in 12th. Kevin Roy as well needed a win. He'll end up in 13th. Timothy Stubblefield, Daytona winner, will finish 14th this time out, with Justin Erb in the 15th position. James Kunkel will finish 16th, final car on the lead lap after being involved in that wreck on the final lap. Steven Stempin will be the first car 1 lap down in 17th, with Stephen Harlow in the 18th spot. Robert A. Moyer Jr. will be in 19th, with Richard Swavely in the 20th position, rounding out your top 20. And rounding out your field, Craig Parks will be 21st, with Jason Hastings 22nd, Kip Easley 23rd, and Alex Muscarello rounds out your 24-car field from this regular season finale here at Daytona.
How do we describe this one? An all-time classic finish, 1/1000th of a second. And for right now, the win is in hands of Lawson Peel, 5th career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series victory, while Warren Kyle Keith is stopped on the trial vote in hopes that they will reverse that call and give him the W. We'll try and get a moment to speak with Lawson Peel right now as they try to decipher what is left of the finish. We're joined right now by Lawson Peel in Droppin the Hammah victory lane. Lawson, does it get any more emotional than that? 1/1000th of a second at the line. You, Warren Kyle Keith, and Eric Schaefer. How do you describe the way the race ended for you?
I don't know. It says 0-0-0 in iRacing, so I didn't realize as we were crossing the line, I was in the grass, obviously, that it was that close. But yeah, I guess Brandon wears a Fitbit or something. He was talking about how high his heart rate got there on the last lap, and certainly just an exciting last lap for sure. We knew that Steven and Ethan were going to make the move, and they got to the outside of Brandon off of 2, and I felt like if I led them to my outside, we would just have a really hard time battling back. It's like a 2v2 on the bottom. So I tried to just block that and, even check them up a little bit. And that just created a lot of, momentum changes and side by side behind me. I got really lucky just kind of covering the blocks. I was honestly content with Ethan getting to my inside. I just didn't want him to get to my outside. So, I wasn't thinking in my head, I'm just going to block the whole racetrack and, not let him get a fender beside me. I was really just, focusing on covering my right side. But the way it just worked out there when we got down to 3 and 4, I think Warren came with a big run, and I was able to block that. And he kind of shoved me out a little bit through the corner. And on the exit, I was clear, but Brandon and Schaefer just had that huge run that developed coming through the short chute. And I tried to go back down to cover that at the last second, and just kind of the way all the bumpers lined up there, he ended up turning me a little bit. And yeah, I guess it just went through the grass and got it. But the pit stop there with a few to go was really key. Just we executed well. It was, to have 5 cars come out in the group like that. It really just increases your odds of being able to win the race, and then having 3 teammates out of the 5 there also was just a big advantage. So we could really kind of anticipate what was going to happen. So yeah, just a really fun race, and glad we got some stops there at the end, and glad we finished it without wrecking until we waited till the last 100 yards to wreck at least. So.
And I want to ask, how stressful is that when you're dealing with a car that cannot make it to the end on fuel? You join your teammates there, you guys come down pit road in the waiting laps, and it's just a waiting game to see whether that secondary pack is going to catch you guys or not. How stressful were things behind the wheel for you, and just maybe with your teammates, and trying to figure out what was the best play of defense when they ultimately caught up at the end?
Yeah, well, we just executed really well on the pit stop, and that was crucial. That was number one. And then I didn't think that the pack was going to run us down like they did. I saw Warren was the point car in the back. I'm not sure who was pushing them, but they just did a really good job catching up to us there in the last handful of laps. And then the run before that, before the pit stop, Steven was doing a good job pushing me. And I guess he was thinking what I was thinking, which was we were trying to keep the pace as high as possible so that nobody could make it on fuel, because I knew that there were people that were thinking about it. I didn't think anybody could save enough to make it. So I just didn't even try. I just committed to, not worrying about fuel from that whatever the last restart was, and they were not even helping him help me. So it was almost like we were running just 185 around the whole track, because it looked like that everybody was running partial throttle behind him. And so we started trying to kind of play some games and pick the pace up so it would hurt people that were trying to save fuel. And I don't really know if that made a difference or not, but that was what we were doing there. And yeah, I just have a lot of fun when the race does play out like that. And, there's an opportunity for some strategy to come into play, because, there's a whole lot more cars in that big pack before that pit stop than the 5 that came out the other side. So that just shows you, how important execution is, and pitting with the right group, and in and out of the pits, in and out of your stall, it can make or break. So yeah, no, I love it when it plays out like that.
Nearly 4 months ago, when we kicked off the season here at Daytona, you were right behind Timothy Stubblefield. When the 2 leaders crashed off turn 4, you're right behind Stubblefield, who ends up winning. You start the season with a runner-up finish. You come back to Daytona, and now you're the one spinning across the line, getting the win by 1/1000th of a second. Is that the closest finish you've ever been a part of as the winner?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I don't even think there's one that I can even say that compares to that one, really. I mean, maybe one that was like 6 1,000ths or 3 1,000ths or something. But certainly not anything down to the 0.000 or 0.001 range. That's really close. So, yeah, just crazy. Honestly, just speechless a little bit about it. Is don't know what to say.
There are drivers in the chat right now trying to decipher the finish from their own vantage points of a screenshot, and trying their best to get the photo finish shot at the line to figure out whether your splitter was just ahead of Keith's or not. And for right now, a timing screen tells us 1/1000th of a second. You grab your 5th win of the season, and it comes right at the end of the regular campaign. Lawson, before we let you go and celebrate here from the World Center of Racing, anyone that you want to give the shout out to and thank for tonight's effort?
Yeah, thanks to you guys in the booth. Thanks to Steven for helping me out there before we pit there, and thanks to my teammates. And good finish there. Thanks to everybody that came out and raced tonight, and Drinking Bros Racing, Paul's Setup Shop, the SpaceX astronauts, all the viewers. all the normal routine.
Well, Lawson, on behalf of all of us here at the KBueno Racing Network, congratulations on the 5th victory. This one coming in the most stunning fashion than all of the others, and I'm sure this one stands as an all-time classic, even though we're only in the first year of this series' existence. So best of luck as you head forward for the playoffs and try to search for a championship, but until then, congratulations on the dub.
Thank you guys very much.
Lawson Peel closes out with a 1/1000th of a second victory. He's got the taste of victory, and then there is the agony of defeat. Francisco Bacalhau, Warren Kyle Keith short of the race win.
Well, Warren, I think there's no way you can come closer to winning this race than you did here tonight. It was the iRacing timing screen just updated to give us zeros all the way across the screen. What can you even come up with words that describe what it's like to finish like this?
No, all I know is we better pack up and head to California next week. I mean, we're going to Auto Club apparently, one-on-one it, do it car style. But yeah, I don't know. It's that's a tough one to lose. You know, I'm not gonna lie. 0.000 on the timing sheet in the car. You know, he's off the racetrack. He's not even on the speedway. I know it's because of a wreck, but that's a tough one to lose to. You know, we had a really fast Jurassic World Rebirth Bass Pro Shops Toyota. Man, the T-Rex, she was chomping it last few laps. Thanks to Kunkel, he was pushing us like an absolute madman. And then we got up to the front and had a really good run. The guys up front were starting to battle it up. You know, just kind of those kind of things at speedways that you just don't think, you just do. And we just started carving. Got to Peel's back bumper and, you know, just didn't have time to block the run. I think if I blocked the run from Banks, I think I win this race. I would have had enough momentum to get past Lawson. But yeah, I mean, heck of a race. You know, it's a crappy way to finish P2, but it's a P2, and you know, I can just do like UCF does, and I can count that as a win. I'll put a win sticker on the car next week.
Absolutely right about that, Warren. And what this means now is that we're in playoff territory. You are, of course, a part of these playoffs, and we go into the first round over at Charlotte, Indianapolis, and Watkins Glen following Memorial Day weekend. So as we have this break before we begin the playoffs, what is going to be your goal, or what are you looking forward to most about this playoff action?
Just see what we can do. You know, apparently, you know, it's the Peel show, so you know, you're gonna have to go past Lawson. He's got so many playoff points that you know he's gonna carry himself all the way to damn near Atlanta. So you know, you're just gonna have to do what you can do best. But you know, it's about surviving. You know, especially without a win, I don't have that many playoff points to back up onto. So you know, entering next week or the next 2 weeks here at Charlotte, it's gonna have to be just lock in and do like we were the last couple of weeks. It's just try to figure out what we can do to get these good positions. You know, last few weeks haven't been good because the last few times it's been getting wrecked in some form of fashion. But hey, that's racing apparently. But good stretch of tracks. Charlotte, Indy, really good at those two tracks. Might as well give the trophy to Lawson at Watkins Glen. So first round will be fun, and then the next 2 rounds, I don't know if you guys have looked at the schedule. It's going to be an absolute crapshoot, especially that final round. 2 plate tracks before we go to Homestead. So, you know, count your blessings to get to those last final rounds, because when they do, it's going to get bad.
Oh boy, but we appreciate the time here, Warren. But before I let you go, just give everybody the shout out to how things happened for you in your 7018.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone at D Legacy. You know, Rich, Parker, Casey wasn't here tonight. I hope Casey's good. You know, we haven't heard from him, so he was supposed to be here. So hopefully Casey's good. James, of course, you know, organizing everything over there at D Legacy and having me over this season. It's been fantastic. And then, yeah, just absolute team effort there at the end to try to get this done. And hopefully we can come back. And I know we got a lot of practice next week. We got a 600 miler to do on Saturday. So we'll be ready for Charlotte.
It is Coke 600 week. But thank you, Warren, for taking the time with us. I know it wasn't the win, but you take a good run going into these playoffs, and it's time to start the second half of the season.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's Warren Kyle Keith, 1/1000th of a second short, but it's even closer than that from iRacing's official standings. You know, ATVO, our timing screen that we use here at the KBueno Racing Network, it goes plus or minus 1/1000th of a second for a lot of the gaps to separate drivers, but at the line from iRacing, it is all zeros across the board. That is Warren Kyle Keith, who ends up in second. Third place goes to DBR's Eric Schaefer, who joins us now. Eric, you were at the back end of the 5-car train in those final laps, clinging on. You're watching Warren Kyle Keith close up from the rear view bumper, and everything starts from there on out in that white flag lap. How could you describe it as you guys chase for the finish?
Realistically, it was kind of crappy. The reason being is that the 2 guys in front of me were pushing Banks so hard that it was causing the whole line to stack up, and that last lap, they caught us so quickly, man, and I was like, oh crap. As soon as I saw the Ethan and Steven go up, I was like, well, I'll just stay on the bottom. Hopefully something will happen. And Banks got shuffled out of line. I just stayed there and stayed on his bumper, and luckily we made it through the carnage. I was hoping Banks and Lawson would have hooked up there. We could have maybe finished 1, 2, 3, but I don't know. I'm happy with a third, but I really didn't deserve it. I was hoping we could have finished a little bit better as a team, but Banks got kind of screwed there.
Well, the good news in all of this is that you are going to be fighting for a Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series title when we start the playoffs in 2 weeks' time for early June. I know you knew that going in after winning at Phoenix and after having the season you've had, but how do you pivot from a moment like tonight and try and turn forward towards going for the first ever DTH Cup Series title?
Not any track that we're going to go to is like Daytona. Everybody knows that, but I don't know, man. Just take the momentum from tonight and just put it into practice and what we need to do with the team and move forward. And hopefully, I mean, I don't think I'm going to either beat Stimpy or Lawson, but who knows? We can get out there and give them a run for the money. But I think it'll be fun while it lasts.
Well, you're going to be running for the title regardless, and a good finish tonight from Daytona hopefully will boost that momentum a little bit. Eric, before we let you go from the World Center of Racing, anybody that you want to thank for tonight's effort?
Yeah, shout out to Stimpy and all the guys, all the admins, him sponsoring the league and everything they do. Huge shout out to you guys for always putting on an awesome broadcast like you do, and shout out to all the DVR guys.
Well, Eric, on behalf of all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, we appreciate the time. As always great to talk to you, of course. Congratulations on the P3. Congrats on making it to the playoffs, and we'll see you for the postseason come Charlotte Motor Speedway in 2 weeks, and we hope you have a good and safe Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, Kenneth. You too.
Eric Schaefer collects out the top 3 here from Daytona International Speedway. And the top 3 and the finish aren't the only storylines of tonight's race. This is the final regular season event after all. So for right now, we turn to one of the men that is in for the top 16 unofficially, Chris Progar, right alongside Francisco Bacallao.
Well, Chris, it probably was not the most ideal race for yourself, and obviously with the pressure of having somebody new winning, knocking you out of these playoffs, it was Lawson that ends up taking the win, meaning you're in. So what's it like now officially having your spot in the playoffs?
I was stressed. I mean, I feel bad that Casey wasn't in there because I think that would have made it for a good race. But basically with Casey not there, I was trying to get ahead of Swavely in the standings. With the stage 1 finish, though, I think he's got me pipped on that one. So we'll just kind of see how it all plays out. But it was a good race. I had a good time. I had my best pit entry I've had the entire time I've been on iRacing tonight. It was amazing. I think I passed like 3 or 4 cars going on a pit road. It was wonderful.
That's always the best feeling when you just have that great pit entry and you're just like, wow. And now you have to focus on getting into your pit stop. But Chris, you had a great run all night with your teammates all night long, getting it to the front and dominating the line. So what was it like working with your teammates in trying to help yourself and all of each other to get yourselves into position?
We just basically got in line. You know, we were communicating. I mean, start of the race, you know, Steve-O, Stampy, myself up top, we just kind of chugged along, you know, managed the gap. You know, there were times where there'd be a checkup and I kind of lose a little bit, have to catch back up. And then, you know, we started side drafting, so we were able to start pulling ahead and things like that. And it was just, you know, we were trying to be as methodical as we could tonight.
Well, it was a great effort from you guys. I know it wasn't probably the result that the team was hoping for, but you guys showed out nonetheless. But Chris, before we let you go here, now that you're a part of these playoffs, I'll give you the opportunity to give the shout-outs to everybody that helps makes this happen for you and your 17.
Just want to say thank you to my teammates, Justin, Jason when he's racing, Sean. With Sean pitting with us tonight, it helped Ross and I keep some speed up. We were able to catch Warren, Parker, and James, and we were able to be in a position tonight where we had an opportunity, and I want to thank Fastenal letting me work for them and run them on the car. I mean, don't do much, but it's nice to have them on board and support me how they do.
Well, appreciate the time you take with us, Chris, not just as a driver, but also as one of the league owners of this series. We appreciate everything you do for us and everybody that helps make this whole thing happen. So congratulations on being a part of the playoffs. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you out in Charlotte.
Thanks, and I appreciate you too very much. It's been a great season, and I cannot wait to see how the playoffs go.
That is Chris Progar, elated to be one of the 16 that will try for a DTH Cup Series title later on this season. The other driver that has the good news given to him after tonight's race is the driver of the number 32 car, and that is Richard Swavely, who joins us now. Richard, you came into tonight plus 14, obviously still not safe, but with Casey Knighton out of this race by not attending and with no new race leader, you're basically part of the top 16. You're going to be in the playoffs. How does that feel?
It feels good. I would have preferred to actually race my way in and not luck into it because someone didn't show up because I pulled a really big dumb that last pit stop and sped on pit road. So, no, it's good. This is the first time I've made the playoffs in any of the next gen series. So I'm pretty pumped. A lot of racetracks, especially this first round that I'm usually do pretty good at. So, looking forward to get through the first round and hopefully make it through a couple of them.
Well, peeking at the first round, I've heard various different takes, whether it be this is a great opening round, maybe some of the drivers don't think so, but Charlotte, Indy, Watkins Glen for the first 3. How do you try and pivot from the emotions of this regular season finale, from now knowing you're in, to focusing now for a title?
The way I look at it is throwing dice to make it into the playoffs at Daytona. You got to go to real racetracks after that. So that's Charlotte. I have a pretty good track record there. Couple top 5s through the previous league in this one. Excuse me. In Indy, I have a win there back in the Gen 6 days. So me and Indy get along really well. So I like tracks where you have to actually drive the car, unlike Daytona, I guess. And that's going to upset a lot of people, but
well, there's a lot of people that share your same opinion, Richard, but you will join 15 others in the bout for the title come 2 weeks' time from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. Before we let you go on this finish here from Daytona, Richard, anybody that you want to thank that made it all possible?
I want to thank, of course, I started my own team this year, the Heavy Metal Jesus Motorsports. Warren's been a really big help with strategy and stuff. He's been really good on the team. Of course, my doggo that's saying hi right here. I clicked on my camera because I wasn't expecting an interview. I clicked it back on, but my good old doggo here, he's always sitting rooting me on and everything. So he's pretty cool. Don't forget, got heaviest headphones. Got the cans on right here. One of the best sets of cans I've ever owned. Great for music, great for this, too. Great sound for this. And then had Hemlock on the car tonight. Seen last, not sure about this broadcast. Seen last broadcast. I got my little kicker that they made for you. I got the boys from Hemlock to make for you. So, of course, big shout out to Hemlock and you guys for putting on the broadcast.
Well, big shout out to you for getting that video, number one, and a shout out to them for being very much willing and able and happy to help us out, maybe give us a little more content for this inaugural season. So, Richard, we really appreciate all of that from the behind the scenes and for the time here this evening. Congratulations on making the playoffs. Heavy Metal Jesus Motorsports is 1 of 1, making the postseason, so very good news. And best of luck as we head down to Charlotte Motor Speedway, and we hope you have a very happy and safe Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, thank you guys, and also big shout out to Stempian and Progar for putting the league on.
That is Richard Swavely gets into the playoffs for the first time in the Next Gen era, whether it be through Sunoco Cup action or in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series. Very happy campers as they will fight for a title. And Francisco, we move forward from there. Far from over this season is we transfer over to what is now the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway that'll take place just 2 weeks from now. We go racing at America's home for racing and NASCAR's backyard. That'll be June 1st, 2025. Coverage begins at around 8 p.m. Eastern. That'll be again right here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel, and then we'll be followed by Indianapolis, Watkins Glen. That should close out the first round of action. We'll eliminate 4. We'll continue through Texas, Bristol, Darlington, Kansas, Talladega, Atlanta, and then we decide the title at the virtual Homestead at Miami Speedway in mid-August. So what should we expect now, Francisco, as we dive into the next mile-and-a-half race of the calendar, first of the postseason?
Well, I will say the good thing is that most of these drivers will be kind of familiar with the Charlotte Motor Speedway, given the fact that this is, for now, starting the Coke 600 week, so plenty of drivers are going to be attempting the actual NIS Coke 600, which is 400 laps on the special event weekends like this one is, not to mention of the official racing that they'll be doing throughout the week there as well, besides the Coke 600. So they'll have so many laps under their belt at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in different conditions that I think most of them will be at least pretty familiar with the racetrack. There shouldn't be anybody that's too unaware, and that should help blend itself into some of the green flag action. Even though there is the week break, it's still recent enough to really make things work. And not to mention the fact that that's not our only Charlotte event coming up. We're of course going to Charlotte Motor Speedway this upcoming Wednesday for the cut-off race in the round of 10 for the 4-wide racing playoffs, where we go from 10 to 5 and go for a championship in 10 days at the Homestead Miami Speedway. So really exciting stuff coming up for us.
It will be a ton of fun once we get down to the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, but for now we have to hold our breaths. 1/1000th of a second, the difference between Lawson Peel and Warren Kyle Keith to close this one out from Daytona, and we end in stunning fashion. To close out this show, we got to thank everyone at the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series for making it all possible, for league owners, Steven Stepien and Chris Progar for making this all happen, and for everyone that makes it all go round at the KBueno Racing Network. A big shout out to Keelan Belsa, Charlie Byer, and Eli Comerford, and then for my colleague in the booth tonight, Francisco Bacallao, I'm Kenneth Bueno, waving so long from Daytona. Lawson Peel gets his 5th career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series victory. We go playoff racing in a couple of weeks' time from Charlotte Motor Speedway. But until then, have a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend.